Hello everyone, Tamia Khan here with your Fox 10 News Now update. Happy Tuesday. Oh my gosh, I just realized I did not change the lower third. I changed everything over here, but this still says that it's Monday, December 21st, and I'd like to just call myself out right at the top. It's very awkward, and I just realized that I put this on the screen during the morning show hit. That's super awkward. I accept full responsibility. Is this how Steve Harvey felt on Sunday night? Probably a little more embarrassed than this, but I'm taking full responsibility on air that I messed this up right here. That aside, we have a lot of stories to talk about. I'm going to update this momentarily. I just got an announcement that an event's happening right now. I don't know where it is, but I see Bernie Sanders on the screen, so we're going to go live there now, and I'm going to fix this in the meantime.
In profit last year, while 1 out of 5 Americans cannot afford to get the prescription drugs their doctors prescribe, and many elderly people can't afford prescription drugs. So what does that take us to? In my view, it takes us to a Medicare for all single-payer program. Medicare for all single-payer program. That will result in savings of many, many thousands of dollars per middle-class family. That's what it will result. Now, where Republicans, and recently Hillary Clinton attacked me, they say, well, Bernie, you're going to be raising taxes. Well, it may be and may not be. We're working on the final points. But it may well be that Jerry would have to pay a few $1,000s more in taxes, but I think Jerry would be pretty happy not to have to pay $19,000 to the private insurance companies. So a Medicare, we have, again, by far, per capita, the most expensive health care system in the world. Under a Medicare for all single-payer system, the middle-class family would save thousands and thousands of dollars in their health care costs. We are going to rally the American people around that, because I think when you explain the facts to the American people, and when you ask how can it be that every other major country on earth manages to do that, why can't we? I think the American people will conclude that we can and we should move in that direction. Okay. Your side? Okay. Yep.
Hi there. My this is on.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. My family is largely from Wisconsin, and we're a very strong union family. In Wisconsin, they worked hard on the recall of Governor Walker, and ultimately were defeated. Our state here, our governor here is doing about the same. He's taking a lot of notes from Wisconsin. I just wanted to say my family, and I'm sure a lot of other families in Wisconsin, felt very defeated after that recall. We felt very underrepresented, and you announcing your candidacy has given us a resurgence of hope, and I just wanted to thank you for running.
I'm sorry, your name is?
Amanda.
Amanda? All right, thank you, Amanda. Let me just say a word about trade unionism. I believe passionately, from the bottom of my heart, in the trade union movement. I believe that working people, that if you are negotiating with a company, if you're one person out there, you have very little power in terms of demanding decent wages and decent working conditions. But when people stand together and negotiate and collectively bargain, they have a shot at getting decent wages and decent working conditions. And all of us, by the way, owe a deep debt of gratitude to the trade union movement over the last very long, decade after decade, fighting for not only trade unionists, but for all people in the working class and the middle class in this country. Now, where we are right now is for a wide variety of reasons. Anti-unionism activities on the part of employers and with Scott Walker on the part of governors, him and others. The loss of millions of decent-paying manufacturing jobs, union jobs, as a result of a disastrous trade policy. There is no secret but that the trade union movement today is significantly diminished. I have introduced legislation which will address a very serious problem in this country today, and that is right now, there are millions of workers who would like to be in a union, but because of illegal employer opposition are unable to do so. So if you were working in a company and you were trying to organize, just coincidentally, the employer might say, well, I'm sorry, Amanda, you're fired because you were late 3 years ago. You say, that's why. And if by some miracle you actually got a vote, you went through the whole process, then the employer might refuse to sit down and negotiate a first contract. Okay? That goes on every day. We have introduced legislation that says, number one, if 50% of the employees in a bargaining unit plus one sign a card to belong to a union, they will have a union. And if an employer refuses to negotiate in good faith, that employer will be severely punished. Now, the reason there is strong opposition, and people like Scott Walker of Wisconsin want to break unions, two parts. Number one, they represent employers who want to be able to pay lower wages. But second of all, they understand that today the political process is being pushed by corporate America and the big money interest. And the major obstacle to the corporate agenda is the trade union movement. If they can break the trade union movement, there is no opposition to them. So count me in as somebody who believes very strongly in trade unions, proud to have the support of millions of union members in this campaign.
I just saw the other day where the U.S. is now going to be selling arms to Taiwan, and I'm just curious, whose job is it that sells these weapons, and why do we keep arming our future enemies,
Well, thank you. You touched on a very important issue. I don't know that Taiwan will, in fact, be a future enemy, but this is what I do know, that the military-industrial complex in this country fans the arms race. I've been in Latin American countries where they have a lot of sophisticated fighter jets. We don't know that they have ever used them or ever will use them. But companies make a lot of money by selling arms. I would like to see the United States being known all over the world as the country that helps poorer countries build schools, provide health care, provide education to their people, rather than arms designed to kill people. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, thanks for coming to Storm Lake. You touched on health care before, and there's one topic that people don't like to talk about because it's politically incorrect, and that's the China study. And I read that book about 3 years ago, and it completely changed my life because of it advocates a whole plant diet, pretty much. But it's not. It changes the environment. It changes agriculture. It changes healthcare. It changes everything. But it changes habits that people don't want to change, and it's kind of amazing what it can do for people. And I'd like you to talk about that.
Sure. When we talk about health care, I'm sorry, your name is? Andrea. Andrea. When we talk about health care, obviously it means that if you get sick, you have to have access to the best possible health care, regardless of your income. But I think what Andrea is touching on is a more important issue, and that is, how do we create a healthy society so that people don't get sick? How do we do a better job in disease prevention? And there are a lot of aspects to that. Before I even get into the food issue, I think, Andrea, you may know that in many low-income communities all over this country, there are people who are suffering from a variety of environmental illnesses. Way back when I was first elected, I managed to get something through called a cancer registry, National Cancer Registry, which will pinpoint those communities which have higher incidences of cancer than other communities, and we can try to figure out why that is so. And a lot of that has to do with environmental factors. So if we're talking about health, we want to make sure that our environment is clean. Now, Andrea raises another issue, a very important issue about food. And we know that the major food companies do not stay up nights worrying about the health of our children. And we also know that we have a major obesity epidemic in this country because a lot of kids are eating a lot of junk food with huge high calories, drinking a lot of very sweet soda, and so forth and so on. So I'm not going to go into this or that particular diet, But I think, and by the way, I want to congratulate Michelle Obama, who has focused on this issue, trying to make our country understand the relationship between food and disease. I will also add to that, if I could, Andrea, that I was chairman of the Veterans Committee for a couple of years and worked with the VA, trying to move toward some Eastern-type medicine. So it's not just, for example, acupuncture and yoga and meditation turn out to do a lot of people a lot of good. And it's not just a question of prescribing pills to treat for a variety of illnesses. So I think we have to look at healthcare in a very comprehensive way. How do we prevent disease? How do we treat those people who are ill? What other approaches are there out there that demonstrably have worked? Thanks for the question.
Senator.
Okay.
Hello. So another young millennial home for Christmas. So I joined the military as a junior engineering officer, and I see defense contractors wasting millions of dollars every day as a part of my duties, ensuring that they deliver what they're supposed to. How do you plan to ensure that, to hold them accountable for the mistakes that they make, while also ensuring that military families aren't shortchanged with the cuts to the defense industry?
That is a fantastic question. What is your first name?
Chris.
Chris. All right. Everyone hear Chris's question? Brilliant question. He's right on. We did a study ourselves on this issue. What Chris is saying is that in a variety of ways, the military-industrial complex and the large defense contractors are ripping off the taxpayers of this country. They're ripping them off through huge cost overruns, in which they say they bid for a contract and they say, okay, we'll build a system for X billion, and then it turns out that it is 2 times X by the time the system is built. It turns out that there is illegal activity. Virtually every major defense contractor, Chris, has been charged with fraud or has reached a settlement with the government and paid heavy fines for ripping off taxpayers. And that's with minimum, I think, oversight, to tell you the truth. I think the situation is probably worse than that. I think you have seen people with very different points of view, like John McCain and myself and others, who are determined to end that type of waste and fraud and abuse. Give you one more example. This is an interesting story, ironic story. The day before 9/11, I think it was September 10th, 2001, some guy who I have nothing in common with, Donald Rumsfeld, then Secretary of Defense, okay, he gave a speech. And he said that there are trillions of dollars in the Department of Defense that we cannot account for. That was Rumsfeld. That was the day before 9/11. That speech never got a whole lot of attention. Okay? Right now, the Department of Defense, to the best of my knowledge, is the only agency of government that cannot sustain an independent audit. So if you go to them and say, okay, how many private contractors do you have? Well, we really don't know. We can't tell you. It's so complicated. It's such a huge, complicated system. So I believe that when we talk about making government cost-effective and protecting taxpayers, it doesn't simply mean cutting Medicaid and food stamps. What it does mean is taking a hard look at an agency which receives about $600 billion a year, where there is an enormous amount of waste and fraud. And Chris, that is exactly what I will do. We are going to take a very hard look at that. And the other side of the equation is that while there's massive cost overruns for defense contractors, we got deployment after deployment for our soldiers, and we have military families getting food stamps. So maybe we want to change those priorities. How's that? Okay. Okay. All right, I think we're going to have to hit the road pretty soon. Maybe one last question.
Senator Sanders, thank you very much. Before I start my question, in the spirit of full disclosure, I serve as the citizens on the U.S. Trade Representative Citizens Advisory Committee for Agriculture. And we're in the agriculture part of the world. And Ambassador Froman, Secretary Vilsack, whom I'm good friends with, are going to tell us that TPP is a good deal for agriculture. I actually wrote the dissent on the report that was sent to Congress. TPP is bad in a number of ways. And if if you could elaborate on how bad that is, not just for agriculture,
Right.
but for our economy.
Okay. Thank you very much. I have believed ever since I've been elected to Congress, I was elected in 1990, that our trade agreements, NAFTA, CAFTA, PNTR with China, and now the TPP, that primarily these trade agreements have been written by big money interests, corporate America, agribusiness, pharmaceutical industry, okay? And I voted against all of them, and I'm helping to lead the effort against the TPP. Specifically, what about the TPP? Number one, American workers in the TPP are being asked to compete against people in Vietnam who make 56 cents an hour minimum wage, 56 cents an hour. I was in Vietnam. People are very, very hardworking. I like the people of Vietnam, so I'm not anti-Vietnamese. But I do believe that it is unfair to American workers to have to compete. You know, when Donald Trump talks about, you know, keeping wages low in America, what he is talking about is that if we don't have low wages here, all the jobs are going to go to Vietnam. Well, I think there is another solution to that problem. I don't think we should be engaging in a trade agreement which forces American workers to compete against people who are making pennies an hour. This trade policy forces our workers to compete against Malaysia, who treat many of their migrant workers almost as indentured servants with no rights at all. All right. So from a worker point of view, companies should not be able to leave America and go to low-wage countries and throw out people out on the street. Issue number two, just one more issue, two more issues. Second issue is you have the pharmaceutical industry, very, very powerful. Their goal today and always is to make sure that you pay the highest prices in the world, and people all over the world pay very high prices. That is their goal, and that's why 3 companies make $45 billion in profits last year. What they have fought for in the TPP is a variety of approaches which maintains the intellectual property of their drugs as long as possible so that poor countries cannot convert those drugs into generics. And people who are desperately poor will have to pay outrageously high prices for drugs. Third issue has to do with the relationship between government and corporate powers. Give you one example. There are countries around the world that are working very hard. It's called invest-the-state process. Are you familiar with that? And here's what that is about. You have a country, Uruguay actually is the country. Interesting story. Uruguay, a tiny little country. Turns out that the president of their country was an oncologist, very concerned about cancer, worked very hard to figure out how he could prevent children in his country from smoking. So they put labels, big labels on cigarettes, warning kids, doing everything that they could to prevent children from smoking. You know what? I think that's a pretty good idea. They were sued, Uruguay was sued and taken to a third-party court because they were threatening the future profits of Philip Morris. How's that? Philip Morris said, hey, we want the freedom to be able to make children sick and get cancer and emphysema, and that's how we make our money. How dare you limit our profits by selling cigarettes to children? And they're now in a they're in a third-party tribunal hearing this case. Uruguay does not have the power to make decisions for their own public health. That type of provision remains in the TPP. So if the state of Iowa, state of Vermont, wants to stand up for environmental reasons or health reasons, we could be sued by a corporation and taken to a third-party tribunal because we're ruining or inhibiting the profits of some private corporations. That is totally absurd. So for those reasons and many more, I am helping to lead the effort against the TPP, and I think we've got a shot to win this thing. Okay. Okay. Let me just conclude. This is a great turnout, and I thank you so much for being here. I thank you very much for the great questions that you asked. I think we have a real shot to win here with your support in Iowa. We got a real shot to win in New Hampshire. If we win in Iowa, we win in New Hampshire, I think we've got a real path toward victory. and not only electing Bernie Sanders as president, but more significantly, in transforming the United States of America. Thank you all very much for being here.
Alright guys, it looks like they have quickly cut away to the White House, which I always like to reference as the place the next presidential election winner is going to live in. Obviously, it's a place that Bernie Sanders wants to live in. Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Samia, I'm still here. Hope you're having a great Tuesday. These are our top stories. Which one do I want to get to? Personally, I do want to get to bullet point number 3 because I love this video. But I know I need to get to headline news first. So I want to give you guys an update on this story up here and this story down here. The latest in the Vegas Strip crash investigation is what I'm going to start off with. So while I tell you this story, I'm going to go ahead and play some video for you from the scene of Sunday's unfortunate crash. Let me go ahead and play this for you. Stand by. It's all running a little slow for some reason. Oh, this is interesting. I don't know if I showed you guys this yesterday, but these were aerials of the actual vehicle involved in the crash. That Oldsmobile involved in that tragic crash that occurred on Sunday. So what we know so far, more than 30 people injured, 1 person killed. That person killed from right here in Arizona. Jessica Valenzuela, 32 years old, from Buckeye, Arizona. The driver is in custody. I believe the driver was scheduled to make an appearance in court this morning. I believe the official appearance of Lakeisha Holloway was scheduled for this morning in Las Vegas. She is being held without bond. And a lot of the articles out there really are just confused as to how this woman could get to this point, considering that she was once viewed as a role model, overcoming a lot of difficulty in her childhood to be successful during her teenage years, only to now, at the age of 24, be arrested in this horrific crime. It's a really sad situation. I'm going to go ahead and pull up a mugshot of Lakeisha Holloway in case you did not see it yesterday. That is Lakeisha Holloway. What we know is that Lakeisha Holloway had been living out of her car for a week and refused to tell investigators why she did it. She did, however, say that she was stressed because security guards would keep running her out of the places where she had parked to sleep in. We know at least 35 people injured in the crash. 3 remain in critical condition as of yesterday, and the person killed was indeed from right here in Arizona. Again, more information on Lakeisha Holloway's background. After a rough childhood that included periods of homelessness, she had become an award-winning high school graduate. Now, people are wondering how she ended up in a Las Vegas jail and on suicide watch after killing 1 person and injuring at least 35 others with her 3-year-old child in the car. Now we know Lakeisha Holloway apparently was homeless and out of money, sleeping in her car in parking garages, and it's possible she may have been on her way to Texas to meet with the father of her daughter, a relationship that split up a while back. Now, according to a police report, Holloway, quote, described a stressful period today where she was trying to rest, sleep inside her vehicle with her daughter, but kept getting run off by security of the properties she stopped at. She ended up on the Strip, a place she did not want to be. Apparently, that is what she said in a quote, a place she did not want to be. She would not explain why she drove onto the sidewalk, but remembered a body bouncing off of her windshield, breaking it. She then parked at a casino a few blocks away, told a parking attendant that she had run down people, and asked the valet to call 911. I'm going to go ahead and play some other video of the scene of that crash. Again, this is the scene of that crash on Sunday night. Now, according to Oregon court records, Lakeisha Holloway had changed her name to Paris Paradise Morton back in October. Now, there's no evidence that Lakeisha Holloway had consumed alcohol, but a drug recognition expert at the scene determined that she may have been under the influence of some sort of stimulant. Again, Holloway, being held without bail, will be charged with murder with a deadly weapon. Again, she is under suicide watch at that jail, and her daughter is being cared for by Child Protective Services. Now, this is a story that we were sent by Fox National yesterday. Going to go ahead and play it for you. This pretty much sums up everything we know.
Is all about, and other Republicans are.
It was a shocking attack on the Las Vegas Strip. Officials saying 24-year-old Lakeisha Holloway intentionally crashed her car into a crowd of tourists Sunday night, killing at least one and injuring dozens of others, with her 3-year-old daughter still in the car. Police say they don't believe it was a terror attack, but are still struggling to come up with a motive.
The intentional act that occurred on the boulevard is going to be very hard for us to explain at face value. So we are working through that.
After the attack, Holloway drove to a nearby casino and asked the valet to call police, saying she'd run over some people on the Strip. She's now being held without bail. Her child is in protective custody, and the prosecutor says he will push for swift justice.
We intend to file charges immediately. We are going to start off by filing one count of murder with the use of a deadly weapon.
The incident having a big impact on the Strip as Las Vegas prepares to celebrate Christmas and the New Year. Some tourists who witnessed the attack say they're thinking about cutting their vacation short, while locals remain shaken by the deliberate nature of the attack.
Oh my God, what is going on? You know, this is Las Vegas. You know, this is Christmas, and I can't say what I want to say on TV, but it's just shocked.
A drug expert on the scene said Holloway appeared to be under the influence of a stimulant, but police are waiting for the results of a blood test to find out. In Los Angeles, William Lajeunesse, Fox News.
All right, guys, so that is the update with that story. Now we are going to go to this story right here. Former Taliban captive Sergeant Bo Bergdahl arraigned in court today. Going to go ahead and play some video from North Carolina that we got in. Give me a second. There it is. Well, I tell you the story. I'm going to play this video for you. Bergdahl entered a no plea at the arraignment. Bergdahl made his court appearance this morning in North Carolina. Now, some background information in case you don't know much about this story. Sergeant Bo Bergdahl disappeared in Afghanistan in 2009 and was held by the Taliban for 5 years. He made an appearance in court Tuesday at Fort Bragg, where he opted for a mix of civilian and military defense lawyers. Now, Bergdahl is being charged with desertion and misbehavior before the enemy. Bergdahl chose to defer his plea this morning. Now, when deciding on a mix of lawyers for his defense, he also deferred a decision on whether he will be tried by a military judge or a mixed court composed of officers. His next hearing is set to be held January 12, 2016. Now, if convicted at a general court-martial, Bergdahl could get life in prison on the misbehavior charge and up to 5 years for desertion. Bergdahl is 29 years old and from Idaho. He walked off his post in eastern Afghanistan in June 2009. He was released in May 2014 as part of a prisoner swap in exchange for 5 detainees in Guantanamo Bay. The move touched off a firestorm of criticism, with some in Congress accusing President Obama of jeopardizing the safety of a nation with the exchange. Now, Bergdahl's disappearance and the possibility that he might face light punishment had angered many in the military, who say his fellow soldiers took considerable risks to search for him. Now, according to Bergdahl's attorney Eugene Fidel has said that the Army did not follow the advice of a preliminary hearing officer in choosing to pursue a general court-martial. Now, the charges against Bergdahl had been announced by the Army earlier this year, back in March. And the charge of misbehavior before the enemy was used hundreds of times during World War II, interesting fact. But scholars say its use appears to have dwindled in conflicts since then. Legal databases and media accounts turn up only a few misbehavior cases since 2001, when fighting began in Afghanistan, followed by Iraq less than 2 years later. Now, in contrast, statistics show the U.S. Army prosecuted about 1,900 desertion cases between 2001 and the end of 2014. All right, now we are going to talk about Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. Yesterday, Donald Trump responded to Hillary Clinton's comments that she made on Saturday. Now, Saturday, Hillary Clinton claimed during the Democratic debate that ISIS was using video of Donald Trump to help in their recruitment process. Now, as you know, things are getting very heated in the presidential election. In fact, let's just show some video of Trump while we talk about this. There is Donald Trump there. So it's very controversial right now because some people consider Donald Trump's language in reference to Hillary Clinton as degrading. He commented that Hillary Clinton's bathroom break during the debate was just too disgusting to talk about, and said, quote, she got schlonged by Barack Obama in the 2000 presidential race. Adding, she lost. I mean, she lost. Now, earlier in the debate, Trump started to criticize Clinton for not returning to the ABC News debate stage on Saturday night in time, but then he said he didn't want to talk about it more because it was disgusting, saying, I know where she went, it's disgusting, I don't want to talk about it. No, it's too disgusting, don't say it, it's disgusting, let's not talk, we want to be very, very straight up. Now, during his appearance yesterday, Trump also commented on Lindsey Graham, who had dropped his presidential bid earlier that day. Also, Trump commenting on Obama as well. Now, today, Clinton campaign director of communications Jennifer Palmieri tweeted, quote, we are not responding to Trump, but everyone who understands the humiliation this degrading language inflicts on all women should. Hashtag I'm with her. On yesterday morning, Trump's camp had demanded an apology from Clinton for the allegation of using Trump as an ISIS tool, and the Clinton camp had responded with, quote, hell no. So as you can see, there's a lot of back and forth between Trump and Clinton, which of course I find interesting given that Hillary Clinton was once at his wedding. Oh, the controversy. How politics can divide a friendship. Let me see what clips I have for you guys today. Maybe I have a clip from yesterday. Well, we actually have an interview that Trump did, a phone interview, so we can go ahead and play that for you guys now. Let me just pull it up for you.
No, I think, these people...
Well, she lied, and she got caught very much so in a lie, and one of her people went on and said there is no video. She said that I was in a video, they made a video. It's a lie. She lies so much, whether it's her trips where she's going to be shot down, and it turns out that didn't happen, and Whitewater was a total lie. There was so many lies, and terrible. And, you look at the job she did, she had very little credibility because of that. But all of a sudden I said, wow, I'm on a video. That's terrible. I heard I was on a video. She's the one that told everybody, and there is no video at all, and that's been now confirmed. And I would say that she should apologize. I would say she should, but she probably won't.
We hear that. I said, tell me, who did he kill? And I go through this whole thing. It would be so great if we could get Russia on our side and other...
When I said they were dancing on rooftops, dancing in the streets, I'm right about that. There are many articles that say that we're in New Jersey. There are many articles that say that's true. All over the world, they were dancing, and they were celebrating. I mean, they were celebrating. Which, look, the only purpose in saying that was that there's something wrong. When you have people that are celebrating the fall of the World Trade Center, and throughout the world they were celebrating, and nobody even disputes that, but they were also celebrating in New Jersey. But throughout the world, I mean, amazingly, they were celebrating, which tells you there's something definitely going on here that's wrong.
It was yet another late Saturday night debate for Democrats that could help shield frontrunner Hillary Clinton from much scrutiny over gaffes. Though at least one of Clinton's comments managed to break through anyway, as Donald Trump hotly disputed the claim that ISIS is using videos of the Republican frontrunner to recruit more terrorists.
I will demand an apology from Hillary. She should apologize. She lies about emails. She lies about Whitewater. She lies about everything.
While a Clinton aide said today, hell no, she will not apologize, the nonpartisan PolitiFacts Truthometer determined her statement was false.
I'm not referring to a specific video, but he is being used in social media by ISIS.
Though on Saturday night, Clinton seemed to have specific videos in mind.
They are going to people showing videos of Donald Trump insulting Islam and Muslims in order to recruit more radical jihadists.
In fact, ISIS has promoted at least one propaganda video using her husband, former President Bill Clinton, as well as other top Democrats and Republicans. In the debate, the former Secretary of State also stumbled over her ties to President Obama on battling ISIS.
We now finally are where we need to be. We have a strategy and a commitment to go after ISIS.
Clinton aides quickly clarified she was referring to a United Nations resolution seeking an end to the civil war in Syria, though the only other woman in the race was not buying it.
No, Mrs. Clinton, we are not where we need to be in the fight against ISIS.
All of this could sting in the general election, so Clinton has a new TV ad trying to deal with it head on.
I will get up every single day and do whatever it takes to make sure our country is safe.
Though for now, Clinton is still coasting in the nomination battle, as Democratic Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders used the debate to largely pull back from attacking Clinton over allegations she and the Democratic National Committee conspired to overplay charges of a data breach by his camp.
Yes, I apologize.
Clinton had no major mistake to shake up the basic dynamic of the race. She's coasting to the Democratic nomination, and the party has helped smooth the way. The next debate is in mid-January, on a Sunday, when there will be not just one, but two NFL playoff games. In Washington, Ed Henry, Fox News.
All right, guys, I am back with you guys, and we have more stories to share with you. I believe I have one more clip of Donald Trump. I believe this is from yesterday in Michigan. Some of you watched it live here on News Now. If you missed it, here are some of the highlights. 1 second. I get this.
This is amazing. Wow. 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 We love Michigan. We love Michigan. We love it. Sadly, I guess you heard, Lindsey Graham left the race today. Sad. Very sad. I'm extremely sad. He was nasty to me, wasn't he? He was nasty. Ooh. You see how many, everybody that goes against me, it's like X. So we started off with 17. I won't say how many left, but a lot of people are starting to leave. They're going to start to leave. But everybody that's going, wouldn't it be nice? That should happen with our country. Everybody goes against us, down the tubes. Sort of interesting, right? Sort of interesting.
He's an embarrassment to the Bush family, and in fact, he doesn't even want to use the Bush name, which is interesting. Jeb is an embarrassment to himself and to his family. What? And the Republican Party...
He came out of nowhere 2 days ago, and he said, Trump is brilliant. He's great. He's the leader. He's the leader of the parties. And he said nice things. I didn't know. I never met him, so I didn't know. And he said nice things. All of a sudden, I'm hearing things like, oh, isn't it terrible that Putin is saying that? That's not terrible. That's good. That's like a good thing, not a bad thing. He can't stand Obama. Obama can't stand him. They're always fighting. Wouldn't it be nice if we could get along like with people? We're soft. We're weak. We have guys like Bergdahl who get caught. I mean, he left. He was a deserter. He was a deserter. He was a dirty, rotten deserter. And we lost 5 and maybe 6 young, great, brilliant, wonderful people trying to bring him back. They were killed, right? So he deserts. Now, 60 years ago, they would have been shot within a very short period of time, right? 25 years ago, probably shot. 10 years ago, long term in prison. Now I hear he's going to get off scot-free. Why?
All right, guys, that is the clip from last night in Grand Rapids, Michigan of Donald Trump. I am now going to switch to topic number 3, which is actually topic number 4 because I started right down here. Lighten things up. The tables have turned. Sarah Palin now parodying Tina Fey instead. As you know, Tina Fey oftentimes parodied Sarah Palin during the election back in 2008 for Saturday Night Live. Well, Sarah Palin decided to parody Tina Fey, specifically her character, on her show 30 Rock with this video titled 31 Rock. This is created by the Independent Journal. I was really entertained, and John McCain makes an appearance, which means there's an Arizona connection to this story, so I have to play it for you. Stand by, guys. 31 Rock. It's pretty amazing. Just the concept, really.
When 31 Rock begins this January, America will meet Lynn Mellon.
This is my safe space!
She's a TV writer who left a small town for the big city.
No snowflakes?
But she's struggling to have it all.
Where's my big gulp?
She's also putting a smackdown on political correctness.
I didn't see you at book club last night. We reviewed Sarah Palin's new book, Sweet Freedom, a devotional, which, politics aside, is a great reminder of the pressures of PC culture.
The only PC I need is right here.
Will she be able to round up a cast and produce a hit show?
Where's the new page?
Or will her writers ruin everything?
Nerds!
And force her old friend to step in?
Mellon, okay, here's what you do.
Star Wars didn't actually change cinema.
There's only one way to find out. Tune in when 31 Rock begins this winter on Independent Journal. Maybe.
I was entertained by that. John McCain making a little appearance, but it's always fun to watch something a little lighthearted considering how often we talk about serious news here on News Now. And speaking of lightheartedness, I know I don't usually like to talk about the Kardashians, but this bullet point right here, I had to talk about it because Kim Kardashian's new app, Kimojis, basically it's Kim Kardashian emojis, Kim emoji combined, Kimojis, broke the App Store yesterday. The Apple App Store crashed momentarily because it was getting that many downloads. In fact, Kim Kardashian posted about it on her Facebook page, being completely in shock. Oh my God. I don't know. I thought it was sort of like an interesting little fact. Gonna go ahead and pull up her Facebook page for you now. You guys can read exactly what she posted. She apologized to Apple for breaking the App Store. Apple, I'm so sorry I broke your App Store. I can't believe so many people downloaded my Kimoji app that it affected the entire App Store. We worked so hard on this app, and we know there are some issues due to the massive downloads that the whole tech team is so working on. My Kimoji app will be up and running again soon. They're also working on fixing the search so you can easily find it. I still can't believe we broke the entire App Store. So, I don't know. That was just trending on Facebook, so I thought I would share that with you. The Kimoji emojis themselves are fairly interesting to look at, and I'll just show you guys some of the Kimoji images that are available. These are some of the things that are emojis, and this is America, guys. Welcome to our society. On that note, that is a wrap on our top 5 stories. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the top 5 temperatures, the upcoming temperatures for the next 10 days. Fairly cool outside, guys. Fairly cool outside. right now. Rather, today we are expecting a high of 56 degrees. Alright guys, now we're going to go ahead and watch Marco Rubio in Berlin, New Hampshire. Berlin, New Hampshire, Marco Rubio.
My great-grandparents came from Norway. My grandfather worked for Brown Company. He quit school at 9 so he could help pay the bills. He became an engineer for Brown Company and built the dam that's across the street here. My question is, they had to come here on visas. They had to have a plan. How do all these people get here now? Undocumented. How do we let them in? How do they stay here?
Well, about 40% of them come on visas. And then the visa expires and they don't leave. And so,
And why not? Why doesn't somebody check up on these people?
because we don't have an entry-exit tracking system. We're basically, America's a hotel that checks people in, but we have no idea if you checked out of your room. So we don't know if they're overstayed. Yeah. Well, and that's why we need an entry-exit tracking system at both airports and seaports, so that we know in real time. It's why I talk about this all the time. Is why, and we need to know in real time when people come in and when they leave, so we have a real-time record of who's overstayed visas. That needs to be fed into an e-verify system, where employers are required to verify you online whether the person you are hiring is legally here. Today, the only requirement is that you sign a paper and produce a social security card, but those are easy to make fraudulent.
Yes, and down in Florida, when I worked for Burger King down there, they had a manager that had 2 social security numbers, and out the window she went, you know.
Yeah. It happens.
That's our tracking system, and if we know they've got a social security number, then why can't we keep track of them?
Well, oftentimes they're using someone else's social security number is what happens when they're here illegally.
6 years ago or something like that.
Yeah, sometimes. They also vote in Chicago and places like that. But so your point is, that's the second point, is when you need to have a more reliable, because ultimately, why do people come illegally to America or overstay visas? Because they know they can. They know someone who did. So let's say that your cousin comes illegally to the United States and 6 months later is working and making money and sending it back. And so it encourages you to try the same thing because they did it. We know it can be done. So I think it's important. You have to shut off the job magnet, and you do that through E-Verify. You have to cut down on the overstays, and that's how you do the entry-exit tracking system, so we know in real time who's overstayed visas, and that information is fed into E-Verify. And the third thing you've got to do is there's got to be more physical, literal security on the southern border, not just for immigration purposes, but for all these other things, including national security. And it's not rocket science how you do that.
Look at the guys that bombed 9/11.
Well, they were here on student visas.
In a Burger King down there.
Yeah.
They came in smiling and making comments so that we would remember them. But, you know, how did they get here and stay here so long?
They came on student visas, and in fact, we now know that ISIS, for example, is actively recruiting people like doctors, physicians, and also student visa people that don't fit your typical profile to use the legal immigration system of the United States to legally enter the United States. The San Bernardino attacker was here on a fiancé visa. It's actually...
But her husband was a legal resident. He was born here.
He's a U.S. citizen, absolutely. Born and raised in the United States, radicalized online, which tells you that homegrown violent extremism is a huge threat that we face. But on the issue of her, his fiancé, here's an example of, no matter how much the administration says we're fully vetting people, this was a process breakdown. In essence, they vetted her. They just didn't vet her well enough. It broke down. For example, they never confirmed that they even knew each other before they got engaged. I mean, that's a huge red flag, right? You've never met each other, you don't even know each other, but you're engaged. I think that's strange. And they didn't pick up on that. They never followed up to confirm it.
Countries do that.
Well, I think in the 21st century, that's a huge red flag. If you're engaged to someone you've never met or even heard about, and you're using to bring them in, you got a big problem. And again, the law required them to confirm that they knew each other before they were engaged, that they had met before they became engaged. But they didn't do it. Somebody who was in charge of processing the paper didn't do their job. And so this is an example of what a different threat we now face. Because 20 years ago, that sort of situation was not right. It would be illegal, but it was probably an arranged marriage designed to give somebody residency. In the 21st century, it might be a threat from a terrorist group. And that's how much the world has changed on us, and therefore our policies need to be adjusted to that new reality.
Hello, Senator.
Hi.
You said that these new climate change policies are raising our cost of living, but how
Yes.
do you plan to deal with this pressing issue of climate change without doing that?
Well, first of all, the climate's always changing. There's never been a time the climate didn't change. Never. And the question fundamentally is, how much is man contributing to these specific changes? And from a policymaker, what can we do about it? So here's the problem we have. The problem we have is they want us to pass X number, make these changes, and they present them to us. So I asked the scientists, if we pass all these things you want, how much will it change the climate back in the direction you want it to go? And their answer is, oh, you won't notice it for 100 years, and only if every other country does it too. And in fact, even the numbers they agreed to in Paris, a lot of scientists are saying that's not even enough. And then I turn to the economists and say, what will this do to our economy? And they say it'll make us a more expensive place to create jobs. In a country where already a historic number of people are unemployed, it will make the cost of living more expensive at a time when already millions of Americans are struggling paycheck to paycheck. So they want me to support policies that hurt our economy but don't really do anything for our environment. They just set an example. I think that's a bad trade-off. So what is a better approach? And by the way, this deal in Paris is a disaster too. Number one, the Chinese have signed this agreement that they're going to cut carbon emissions, and we all know how the Chinese always keep every agreement they ever signed to, right? Like they signed an agreement not to cyber attack the United States when they visited Washington, and the next day they were conducting cyber attacks. But the second point that I would make is, the Chinese have said, and by the way, we agree to all these benchmarks. We are the leading carbon emitters in the world, the Chinese are. We agree to all these benchmarks that have been set, but we're only going to do them if it doesn't hurt our economy. Well, it's going to hurt your economy, so that means they're not going to do it. The third thing that's really outrageous is the president committed us to a fund where you, the American taxpayer, is going to contribute money to a global fund to help developing countries. And who are the developing countries? China's a developing country. India's a developing country. So we're basically going to take money away from you to help them lower their carbon emissions. I'm not supporting that. And the fourth point I would make is, how do we deal with it? I think innovators are already helping us deal with it. America's already cleaner than it was. America is already becoming, it's trending even cleaner than we've ever been, but not because of government mandates. Why has America become cleaner? Because the American innovator figured out how to drill sideways. So now we can use more natural gas than ever, a lower carbon fuel, for example, than coal. Why is America more innovative? Because we become more energy efficient. Today, cars get more miles per gallon than they've ever gotten before. Why is America moving in a cleaner direction? Because battery life and electrical powered cars are becoming longer and increasingly more affordable. Why has America become cleaner? Because American technology and innovation is making wind power and solar panel power and renewables more cost effective and more market competitive. The American innovator, given the space and the time, will continue to do this for us. We are moving in this direction anyway, and we are moving in this direction for purposes of energy independence. We're moving in this direction for purposes of having the most diverse portfolio possible. But these government measures that they're trying to ram down our throat are going to dramatically hurt our economy. I, in good conscience, cannot support policies that take a country that is already struggling to provide jobs and upward mobility for millions of people and make it worse, while the countries that are leading the world in pollution are doing nothing except polluting more and emitting even more carbon. So I want us to deal with these issues on the basis of innovation. And by the way, by relying on sources of fuel that are cleaner, like natural gas, which America has an abundant supply of, like nuclear energy, which we know how to do better than anyone in the world, and it is a zero carbon emission fuel. And these are things that, let's do the other things too, wind, solar, biofuels, let's do them all. Let's lead the world in all of them. But don't let the government artificially pick one over another, because you're manipulating the market and you're driving up costs for people that are already struggling with a high cost of living.
Senator Rubio, so glad to have you here.
Thank you.
My name's Nathan Wells, and I'm a full-time student at the White Mountains Community College. I wanted to preface my question by saying that last year we had a job fair at the college, and there was a state trooper that had a table set up, and he was asking me, we were making small talk, and he was talking, and he asked me what my major was. When I told him my major was early childhood education, he said, "Oh, that's the wrong field." He said, "You're never going to make any money there." And the sad thing is that he's correct. There's very, very little money to be made in that field. But my question would be, given the current rise in developmental disabilities, we're talking rise in drug use, rise in poverty, and an alarming rise in violence, the evidence shows that all of those pieces can be largely done away with if children are given the right care in the first few years of life. So my question for you is, how, as president, could you financially empower the field of early childhood education?
Well, I support early childhood education. I have throughout my time in public service, and continue to believe that it is a very effective way that children as young as 2, 3, or 4 should be in learning environments, not just warehousing childcare. But I also believe the federal government really has no role to play in that. That is a local and state issue. And in fact, if you put the federal government in charge of it, they'll mess it up. They'll make it worse than ever. And that's what's happening now. And so I think one of the things we need to begin to accept is that there is not a federal government solution to every problem in our country. That the President of the United States is not in charge of every issue before our land. The federal government is a very limited government, designed to do things like national security and leave the rest up to state and local communities. If you wanted to create innovative new policies to get more people into early childhood, you're going to have a lot more influence in front of your school board or your local community than you're ever going to have in Washington, D.C. So that's where the power to make these decisions matter. Now, I do think I support policies that will make it more affordable and easier for people to do it. Like, for example, I support an increase in the per-child tax credit. Why do I support that? It's not just because I have 4 children. It's because I know that raising children in the 21st century is expensive. And one of those expenses that's in place is, what do you do with your kids during the day while you're working? So take the case of a single mother who makes $15 an hour and has 2 kids on her own. Someone's got to watch them while they're 2, 3, 4, 5 years old before they get into kindergarten. So today, the only options available to you are a child care center in some communities, where they'll watch the kids, they'll feed them, they'll put them down for a nap, but they're not learning. If we could empower parents to keep more of their own money through a refundable increase in the child tax credit, where each child, you have to be working to get it, so it's pro-work, these families have more financial resources to put their kids in a learning environment at that young age. The second thing is, I believe that the child care tax credit, which has been 30 out of 50 states, child care is more expensive than going to college. Okay, think about that. In 30 out of 50 states, child care is more expensive than going to college. I actually think we should expand the child care tax credit so that students can use it. Because one of the things that will keep single parents from going back to school is they have no one to watch their kids. Again, empowering them with more money of their own that they can use to put their kids in a better setting. The other thing I'm a big supporter of is school choice. And the reason why I support school choice is because the only people in America who cannot put their kids in the right setting are poor people. Rich people can pay for them to go to any school they want. Upper middle class families just move to a better neighborhood with better schools. The only people in America that we say to them, you must send them to the school we tell you to, even if the school isn't working, are poor families. So that's why I'm a supporter of school choice. That's why I'm a supporter of creating a scholarship, of allowing companies to pay a portion of their corporate taxes to a not-for-profit scholarship organization that gives scholarship to poor families to send their kids to a school of their choice, and hopefully empower more parents to get them into these settings. So as president, I will have no problem saying that we should put more of our children at a young age in learning environments at 2, 3, and 4 years of age, so that they're learning. Kids can learn to read at 4 years old, and my kids did. But ultimately, what those programs look like and how they're designed have to be decided at the state and local level, because that's where you're going to find innovation that will open the doors to that. So as president, I have no problem telling people that early childhood education is important, but it is primarily a state and local function. We don't need the federal government involved in pre-K through 12 education. We don't need Common Core. We don't need any of these things. That power belongs at the state and local level, where you can influence them a lot easier than you can your congressman, your senator, the president, or some bureaucrat at the Department of Education.
That the federal program of Head Start is
Well, I would say that the program of Head Start is outdated, because basically the child has to follow the benefit as opposed to the benefit follow the child. Today, the Head Start is largely only available for specific areas that they tell you Head Start funds are only available here. What I would like to see is those funds turned over into a fund that follows the child, so that if you qualify for Head Start, you can use those funds to go to any setting that you want to put your child in, not just the places the federal government says are the places you can put them in. It really needs to be a benefit that follows the child, not the child have to follow the benefit.
We need programs in our schools, too, that help young couples, young teenage girls and boys to know what's expected of them as parents. I mean, I grew up with flower power children growing up and finding their own path. Now, if these people have had children, what did they tell their children about being a grown-up?
Well, you just hit the nail on the head, and that is, there's a lot of problems in our country the government will not be able to fix. There's no law I can pass to make people better parents. There's no law I can pass to make people better husbands or wives. If I could, my wife would probably run for office if she could get something like that passed. I think we need to increasingly as a society recognize that some of the most influential things we will ever do happen in our homes. That what happens in our house is oftentimes more important than what happens in the White House. We do have very significant societal problems in America. And as heartbroken as we may be, there are limits to what government can do about it. Now, that's why I'm for a pro-family tax code, because I think empowering family will have an impact on our long-term as a society. That's why we shouldn't have any policies that discourage marriage or family formation. That's why I'm a supporter of religious liberties, because I believe that our faith communities are an important part of instilling and reinforcing values in our people. But ultimately, guys, as a country, we have to take responsibility for ourselves. For ourselves, for our families, for our children. Not constantly look to the government and say, Mr. President, what are you going to do about the fact that, families, the kids today aren't being taught values? Well, that's the job of parents and communities, not the job of the government. And if we try to get the government to do it, they're going to mess it up.
Do you think religion plays a part in that?
Absolutely.
It's not the center of the home anymore.
I think the faith community is critical. Now look, we're a free country. You want to worship trees, you can worship trees. You want to worship nothing at all, you have a right to worship nothing at all. But I am telling you that the values that are Judeo-Christian values are a key component of this nation's 200 years success. And the reason why is it teaches us to be charitable. It is not a coincidence that the American people are the most charitable people on earth. The government's not making us contribute to charity. You know why we do it? Because our faith has taught us that caring for the less fortunate is a moral obligation. A faith community gives reason behind our laws. When I teach my kids don't do something because it's illegal, well, laws can always be changed. But if I can teach my kids don't do something because your Creator in heaven is very disappointed in you, that's a powerful way to instill values in people. And so absolutely it is.
We're letting atheists dictate to what we can present out there.
Well, I'm probably not going to win the atheist vote, so I'm done. But I think we're a free country. If people want to believe in nothing, they have a right to do that. What they don't have a right to do is impinge on the rights of people that do believe in something to exercise those beliefs in their lives and in their community. So last night, I think it's in Maine, a teacher was forced to take down a Christmas tree from her classroom. Now, it was a Christmas tree with Hello Kitty ornaments. There wasn't even any sort of religious connotation to it. I mean, things have gone too far. I mean, here's the point. If you're offended by a Christmas tree, don't look at it. I mean, who's offended by a Christmas tree? Who's offended? I mean, I see all kinds of symbols of different faiths. It doesn't offend me. We've gone too far on this stuff, right? I mean, it's gone crazy. To the point now where you're afraid to say Merry Christmas to somebody because they might get offended. Why? If you don't believe it, why are you offended? What would offend you from something you don't think is true? So I think we've gone too far in the opposite direction here. We're a free society. We're a pluralistic society. I respect everyone's right to believe in whatever you want. But it's not just the right to believe. It's the right to exercise your faith. And that's a critical difference. One thing is to say, you have a right to believe whatever you want, but keep it to yourself. That's not what the Constitution says. It is the freedom to exercise your faith, and that means to live out the principles of your faith. And for people that are concerned about that, well, let me tell you what my faith teaches me. My faith teaches me to love my enemies, to care for my neighbors, to feed the naked and to clothe the naked and feed the hungry and care for the less fortunate. These are incredible values. You better hope the next president of the United States is influenced by values such as that. And it's not a coincidence that this country that had such strong principles in our founding has been so successful. I guess I'd make one more point in this regard. Our nation doesn't even make sense without these spiritual principles, because on its very founding, this country was created on the belief that we are all given certain rights by our Creator. not by the king, not by the government, not by the Constitution, that our rights come from an all-powerful God. Life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness are God-given rights. And the purpose of government is to protect those rights, not to decide them or to grant them. So we were founded on a spiritual principle. If you yank that away, then where do these rights come from? They're only whatever your leaders decide they are. And that's what that we stop being special or different.
Washington made 30 million laws to enforce the 10 Commandments.
I like that. 30 million laws to enforce 10 commandments. Yes, ma'am. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. It's a gentleman behind you, but we'll get to you, too.
Morning, Senator. I have a three-part question. As a veteran, I'd like to know how you're going to streamline our benefits with the VA to include even basic services and homelessness for vets. Secondly, if we put boots on the ground in the Middle East, being an Iraq War veteran, one of the things that tripped us up a lot was our rules of engagement. So how would you tackle that problem? And lastly, as a current government employee, I'm not going to say I've been the victim, but I've had to go through not receiving a paycheck because the government shuts down. So next time the government shuts down, is that going to include congressmen and senators?
Yeah. Okay. Well, a couple of points. And the third point is the government shouldn't shut down. It should be reduced. Government should be made smaller, but it shouldn't shut down. And it doesn't help your story. Ultimately, when the government reopens, everybody gets their checks back retroactively. It didn't help you if you missed a payment on your bills. On the second point that you make about rules of engagement, well, let me get to the first two on the veterans. On the veteran point, I would say, number one, I'm the only one running that's ever done anything about the VA. And last year I passed that law that gave us the power. And let me back up. There are really good people at the VA. So this is not a smear on everyone working there. I would tell you the vast majority of people that work at the VA are good people. They care about veterans. Some of them are veterans themselves. And then you've got people that are not doing a good job. And those people, you should be able to fire them. So last year we passed a law that said if you're not doing a good job, the VA can fire you if you're a senior executive. We don't know how many people they fired. It looks like they've only fired one, and that's on appeal. Meanwhile, they've given out dozens of bonuses. That makes no sense. So when I'm president, we will actually not just enforce that, we will pass a second law that says it's not just senior executives. If anyone is not doing a good job at the VA, we can fire you. We will do that. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to make the benefits follow the veteran, not the veteran follow the benefits. So the GI Bill. Does the GI Bill say, here's the GI Bill, but you can only use it to go to military colleges? It says you can use the GI Bill to go to any accredited school in America. That's what it says. Why isn't the VA benefits for health care the same thing? It will be when I'm president. Your VA benefits will follow you. If you want to go to the VA because you love the VA, you can go to the VA. But what if they make you wait 6 months to see a doctor? And there's a hospital down the street ready to see you right away. You should be able to take your benefits and go there instead. My brother is going through that right now. Not exactly that case. He's going through a long and very complicated appeal. He was a Green Beret from 68 to 71 in the 7th Special Forces. One day he jumped out of an airplane and knocked out his front teeth. They took him to the dentist. They fixed him up, but they never made a record of it because he was in the 7th Special Forces. And, you know, they had a different process back then for Special Forces. Now he needs dental work every 10 years. He has to file these long appeals processes, and his brother's a senator. So just imagine somebody else that what they're going through. It's outrageous. So we need to process the VA so that it follows the benefit and it's easier to process through that. You raised homelessness and other issues. Absolutely. It's a huge problem. One of the things that's happening in our country, unfortunately, number one is the mental aspects of coming back from war. We have veterans that have suffered traumatic brain injury and don't know it because there was a detonation nearby. It created a concussive effect. It was never documented. And then it begins to manifest itself. Worry about concussions in football, worry about concussions among our veterans who have suffered traumatic brain injury, and it wasn't even recorded because they were near a blast, and the brain is very delicate in those sort of situations, but no one ever wrote it down, and now it's starting to manifest itself through memory loss. The other is integrating people back into society. Why don't we give people credit, college credit, licensing credit for what they learned while they were in the military? So if you were a truck driver, and you were hauling explosives on a dirt road in Iraq or Afghanistan, are you telling me that you don't qualify for a commercial license in America to haul eggs on the interstate highway system? If you were learned skills, if you fired these $1 million missiles to fly through the window of a building halfway around the world, you're telling me you're not qualified to run manufacturing plant or do work in the private sector, we should create more synergy between the skills people acquire in the military and how we license it in the private sector. Let me give credit to a union here. The welders, pipe fitters, and plumbers are doing a really good job of taking in veterans and giving them the additional training they need to be welders, pipe fitters, plumbers, and the trades. We should be doing more of that. Give them credit. They've done a good job on that. We need more of that sort of integration for our veterans, where the skills that you're learning in the public sector are now being applied to integration in the private sector. And your question about rules of engagement, most important question the president ever has to answer. There's a very straightforward criteria. Number one, is a national security interest of the United States at stake? In essence, not a symbolic strike, not we're sending a message to the world strike. Are we dealing with this militarily because the interests of the United States are at stake? Number two, is military force the best option available for us? In essence, has diplomacy failed, or is there no diplomacy possible? Because, for example, ISIS has no ambassadors or diplomats, and they can't be negotiated with anyway. Number three, are we providing our men and women the resources they need to succeed? And that means the equipment, and the training, and the weaponry, and the intelligence necessary to win. The objective is victory. We've defined victory. This is what victory looks like, and you have the resources you need to win, and you have the rules of engagement that you need to win. Don't put men and women into harm's way without the resources and without the appropriate rules of engagement. And we've done that, and we're doing that. That's why these defense cuts are so problematic. These defense cuts mean we will not be able to provide them in a short amount of time the resources they need to succeed. These cuts in the military mean that people are now being redeployed much faster and much longer than they've been in the past, putting a tremendous strain on families and our servicemen and women. So these are the criteria that I will look at before ever putting any one of our servicemen and women in harm's way. We make a very important promise to men and women in uniform, and here's the promise we make. We will never put you in a fair fight. If we ever put you into a fight, you're going to have better training, better weapons, and more information than any adversary you will ever face. There is no way we will be able to keep that promise if we keep cutting our military every year the way we're doing now. We won't be able to keep it. And that's not fair to you, and that's not fair to the people that have served us in the past, and it's not fair to the people that are serving us now. We'll change that when I'm president. I promise you that.
Senator, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
First of all, thank you for coming. And I'm speaking here, part of the American dream. That's your platform. Mm-hmm. And I'm a first-generation American. My parents were born in Quebec province, and I'm a union member. And I really appreciate your mentioning the union, because that's the crux of my question. I've worked 3 jobs. I travel 125 miles a day, 6 days a week to go to work, because there's no work here for me. The 3 jobs that I've had were at the biomass here in Berlin, and an energy plant.
Mm-hmm. You drove by it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And,
the wood chips?
Pardon me?
The wood chips plant?
Yes, the wood chips, yeah. So I worked there this year, and I worked at a natural gas pipeline in Williston, Vermont, and drove it 2.5 hours every day to go to work and back. And I worked at a coal-fired power plant in Bow, New Hampshire, Merrimack Station, which was owned by its Eversource, now was public service. And the crux of my question is that there's a wall in between the Republican Party and union people. I'm conservative. I'm pro-life and pro-Second Amendment, and I'm probably, I didn't go along with my parents and go, I'm not a Roosevelt Democrat, I'm a Republican. I was a Republican. I'm an independent now. But I'm an independent because the Republican Party ceded northern New Hampshire, the 3 northernmost counties. We don't see a Rubio office here. We cede our elections to the Democratic Party up here. And what I want to know is Barack Obama made Joe the Plumber famous with his question about the coal-fired power plants. Barack Obama said that he would overregulate coal-fired power plants, which is where I get a lot of my work, out of existence. And so now we have windmills, we have all these alternative energies. Number one, would you consider a Manhattan type project to nuclear fusion instead of fission power plants? Number two is, would you break down the walls? Ronald Reagan, our most conservative president, the best president of my lifetime, was once a president of the Screen Actors Guild for like 9 years. And so he was a conservative and pro-union. So what I'm asking, and the Republican Party needs minorities, they need union people. I see union people on jobs in the lunchroom with Bernie stickers on their hard hats. It blows my mind. And so we need to tear down the walls we need to be inclusionary with union people. And I was glad that you gave a shout out to the pipe fitters and the iron workers. I'm a union laborer. Here's my union card, and I'm a member of the Massachusetts Laborers Union. I don't want to travel to work, but if we could have a sensible energy policy with the Keystone Pipeline, are you in favor of the Keystone Pipeline?
Yeah, absolutely.
And is there a way? Is there any so that I'm just so tired of seeding the union, all the union workers, say 90% of them, that vote Democrat, because that's what they do historically.
I agree with you 100%.
What will you do to include union people on your march to the White House, to the Oval Office?
So first of all, the quarrels I've had with labor unions have been on the public side. And that is because the government works for us, not us for the government. And it goes back to this thing I was talking about, the VA. If you are not doing a good job, government should have the ability to fire you. And you've got public unions that have become so powerful that you can't fire a government employee even if they refuse to work or not work well. And that's what my quarrel has been. On the private side, I actually often highlight issues that the private unions care about. The Teamsters, the largest group of Teamsters in the world are UPS truck drivers, for example, and they're facing regulatory impediments. The welders, pipe fitters, plumbers, the Keystone Pipeline is just one project, but there are hundreds of other projects like that that are being held up by the regulatory state. So my argument basically is we're going to make America the best place in the world to create the kinds of jobs that people like you fill. And those jobs are being hurt right now by these regulations that you mentioned. You talked about wind. There's jobs in wind. There's jobs in solar. There's jobs, obviously, in biofuels and biomass. There's jobs in coal and nuclear and in natural gas. I want us to have the most diverse energy portfolio possible. Let's do it all. Let's be the leader in all of them. Why do we have to have one and not the other? Let's do all of them. That's what my argument. And we're going to make it easier to create jobs by making it all of them. Here's the other thing that's going to happen if you lower and stabilize the price of energy, which is why I always talk about natural gas. If we have a natural gas advantage over the rest of the world, which means that keeping the lights on and running a manufacturing facility is cheaper here than it is in another country because our gas prices and therefore our energy prices are significantly lower. Do you know what that means? That means we're competitive again. That means we can become an economy that makes things again. And once we become an economy that makes things again, do you know what that means? That means they got to hire people to run those machines and fix those machines and apply those machines. That means jobs are the kinds you're talking about. So I do agree with you that we need to do a better job of focusing on that reality because the agenda, and that's why I always talk about skills training. Part of the problem we have in America for the last 30 years is we started telling our kids, look, trade school are for the kids that aren't that smart. The smart kids go to college. The kids that aren't that smart, those are the ones that have to go to trade school. That's a lie. That is a lie. If you go to any of these 21st century manufacturing facilities and you see the machines that these people are operating, these are complex pieces of machinery, so they're smart. Number two, trade school are for kids that want to make $50,000 a year at 18 years of age. Because when you graduate and you're certified and ready to work as a welder, you can make $50,000 as a first-time welder. You can make $50,000 and up. And up. Long-haul truckers. I know someone who's a long-haul trucker that made over $100,000. Hard work. A lot of driving, obviously. A lot of nights away from home. But we're not training people to do this work anymore. And part of it is this cultural disconnect. That we've started telling young people, those jobs are not the jobs you want. We have to have a president that celebrates that kind of work. That kind of work doesn't just empower people to make more money. That's what you build communities around. Entire communities are built around this. You get a major manufacturing facility back into a community, and that community springs to life. Because now what does that bring? Workers. And what do workers become? Customers for the shops, homeowners, volunteers at the PTA, the parents of the children that go to school, the volunteers at churches and synagogues on the weekends. This is the backbone of our country, and we need to bring it back. And we can. We can compete with anyone in the world, but not with a government that is keeping us from doing that. And that's what we have to. That is the disconnect. I come from that background. My parents weren't blue-collar workers in that sense. My mother was a maid at a hotel. My father was a bartender, a member of a union. I walked the picket line with him when I was 11 and 12 years old in Las Vegas, Nevada. So my point is, I come from that environment in the sense that these are the kinds of jobs. My parents were never rich. They were never famous people. never made a lot of money. Let me tell you what they were. They were homeowners in a safe and stable neighborhood. They were active parents in the lives of their children. They became retirees that weren't rich but lived with dignity and security. And all 4 of their kids are better off than them. That's the American dream. That's what makes us different from the rest of the world. And we need to make it easier for us to create more of those jobs. So I'm telling you, if you are a member of a labor union that works in energy, works in construction, works in developing infrastructure for anything, you should be really upset at this administration. Because these crazy regulations and these crazy tax policies are forcing the people that want to hire you to take those jobs to another country. That's what they're doing.
But that message isn't getting out, Senator.
Well, that's why we're here. That we're going to get that message out. But thank you for reminding us. That's really important.
Well, you're going to revise the tax code so it'll be more fair to everybody.
The tax code? Well, first of all, if I told you, design for me a tax code that encourages companies to leave America, you would be hard-pressed to find a better one than the one we have now. We have a tax code, number one, it has the highest combined business tax rate on the planet. On the planet. So basically, if you do business in America, you are going to pay more in taxes than you do in virtually any other developed country. We have a tax code that says to American businesses, if you make money in another country and you decide, I want to bring that money back to America, we're going to make you pay taxes on that money twice. So the result is they don't do it. They leave their money in the other country. You know how much money they've left in other countries? $2 trillion. Do you know what $2 trillion is? $2 trillion is the size of the entire Russian economy. That's what's sitting in American corporate cash being invested overseas instead of here. The third point is, you're talk about manufacturing and union jobs. We live in an economy now with this tax code that if a business says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to invest $100,000 in a new piece of equipment. And that new piece of equipment means I'm going to have to hire 2 or 3 people to operate it. Well, today, if you want that $100,000 to write it off your taxes, you got to do it on something called the schedule of depreciation over a number of years. We're going to fix all those things I just mentioned. Number one, every business in America, from the small S corporation that runs a dry clean shop to the big companies, all of them, none of them, will pay more than 25%, not 35, 25% flat. That is a huge tax cut for small business because most small businesses are organized as S corporations or partnerships. They're pass-throughs, which means you're paying on your personal rate, which could be as high as 39.5%. Number two, we're going to have a territorial system of taxation. And what that means is if you're an American company and you make $1 million selling things in Germany, and you take that $1 million and bring it back to America to create jobs here, you're not going to pay taxes on it twice. You're only going to pay taxes on it once, and that is in the country where you made the money. So we can bring some of that $2 trillion back to the United States. Number three, we're going to allow companies to immediately expense their investment. So if you buy a $100,000 piece of equipment and spend $100,000 hiring people to fill that job to operate it, you're going to be able to write that off your taxes that same year, the entire cost. So suddenly, now it becomes more cost effective. Yeah, I'm going to have to come up with $100,000 to buy this piece of equipment, but I'm going to get the $100,000 back off my taxes in that given tax year. So that companies have an incentive to invest more in America. By the way, we got to deal with regulations too. If I pass a regulation that forces you to buy a $100,000 piece of equipment that you can't write off your taxes, that's $100,000 you don't have to hire more people, to give your workers raises or bonuses, or to expand operations. That's why regulatory reform is so important as well. We are going to have a pro-work, pro-family, pro-business tax code that allows America to be competitive. I'm telling you guys, and I know you believe this, we're the most productive workers in the world. There's no worker on this planet that produces more per hour than the American worker. None. They're cheaper than us in some places, but they're not more productive. And number two, and they're cheaper for not for long either. And number two, there's no more creative and innovative people in the world. Americans make up all kinds of stuff. Every day they invent incredible things, which create new jobs and new opportunities. It is our government that's holding us back. It's a miracle this economy even grows 0.1%, given what our government is doing to us. If we can put in place policies that allow us to be globally competitive, there is no nation on earth that can compete with us. There isn't. All you need is a president and a government that will give us a chance to do that, and we can win against any nation, any economy on this planet. But they're not giving us a chance right now. They're killing us with these crazy, backward policies.
Senator, this will be your second and last question.
Okay.
You made an allusion to your relative young age when you talked about waiting your time at the outset. And I have a question. Do you have confidence in your ability when you're actually sitting across the table from Putin or from the mullahs in Tehran and getting the job done for us?
Yeah, well, first of all, It is true that there are people running for president that have lived longer than I have. What is not true is that anybody running for president has a better understanding or shown better judgment on the issues we face today than I do. Second, and particularly when it comes to foreign policy, I'm the only one running for president that has carefully and repeatedly, for a long time now, explained what Vladimir Putin is doing. I know who Vladimir Putin is and what he's all about. I've called him a thug and a gangster because he operates as one. I don't think he's offended by that, by the way. And unlike some other people running for president, I wouldn't feel good about it if Vladimir Putin was saying nice things about me, because he's also a killer. But he's a cost-benefit analysis guy. And the reason why Vladimir Putin is doing what he is doing is because he thinks he can get away with it. He views this president as weak and misguided. He believed that 7 years ago when the president did the reset with Russia. He didn't see that as a diplomatic outreach. He saw that as, this guy's soft. It's time to test him a little bit. And so he did. What Vladimir Putin today is arguing is, I want a sphere of influence. Any country that was part of the Warsaw Pact or any country that was once a former Soviet republic, they're under our control. Before you, America, or any country can have a deal with them economically, diplomatically, culturally, you got to come through us. We should never accept that. From day one, he will know that we'll never accept that. So I'll go in knowing exactly who he is, and he'll know I know exactly who he is. Number two, in the issue of, we wouldn't be dealing with the mullahs in Iran. I mean, there's nothing really to negotiate with a radical Shia cleric. I've already said exactly what I would do on my first day in office. We will cancel the president's deal with Iran, and don't buy into all this talk that, oh, we can't do that, all these other countries are already on board. Guys, if a company has to decide whether to invest in Iran or in America, because if we reverse the sanctions, what it basically means is if you're doing business with Iran, you can't do business with America. You think they're going to pick the Iranian economy over the American economy? They're not. We are the sanctions. And so the point is we would reinforce those sanctions, and we'll make it very clear to them. If you want nuclear energy, you don't need it because you're an oil-rich country, but if you want nuclear energy, you can have it the exact same way South Korea has it, which is you can import enriched material. You don't need to enrich your own uranium and reprocess your own plutonium. And if you try to do that and build a weapon, we're going to destroy your program. We don't want it to lead to war, but war is a lot better than living in a world with a radical Shia cleric in Iran possessing nuclear weapons and the ability to deliver them to the United States. And so I've been very clear about this from the onset. So I feel not just confident in my ability to deal with it, what I feel very confident about is that I've been saying these things for 5 years, before some of these things even happened. You may recall, but I think it was the third presidential debate, I said, in less than 2 weeks, Vladimir Putin will be conducting airstrikes in Syria. And some people mocked me, he's talking about 2 weeks to the day. I'm talking about 2 weeks to the day. They started conducting airstrikes. I know what these people, who they are and what they're about. They have precedent in history of people just like them. We will deal with them for who they are. And more importantly, you will have a president that believes this is the most important and powerful country in the world and is going to act like it. Russia has a $2 trillion economy. We have a $19 trillion economy. Russia is not equal to the United States on the global stage. They're an important country because between us we possess 90% of the world's nuclear weapons. And we have no quarrel with the Russian people. But their president is not someone that we're going to treat as someone who's an equal, especially given his goals and his aims. And Iran is governed by a radical Shia cleric. He's a religious figure who wants to trigger the apocalypse. There's no way in the world I'm going to leave my children with a world in which a guy like that has nuclear weapons. There's just no way we're going to do that. It's not going to happen. And we're going to be clear about it from my first day in office. Thank you for your patience. I know you were ready earlier.
That's all right. Thank you very much, Senator, for coming here today. My question is really two-part. One, I think that race relations has been an all-time low under this administration, and part of that has affected the random violence towards police. As the wife of a police officer, and my son was just certified as a trooper in New Hampshire, this issue is very dear to my heart. And the silence from Washington has been deafening. And I want a president who has my son's back.
Absolutely. Let me tell you first of all, before I get the second point that I want to talk about this issue, the overwhelming majority of the men and women who serve us as law enforcement and first responders in this country are incredible people. And I say that because if, God forbid, tonight any of us run into trouble and we call 911, these are people that are going to be willing to show up and die before we do. Think about it. These are people we don't even know who are willing to put their lives on the line so that you or any of us are safe. One of the most moving images of the attack in San Bernardino is a video that someone took on their phone of a police officer telling the group with him, guys, don't worry, before any of you get hurt, it'll happen to me. This is the mindset of someone who goes out there every single day and does this. And this is also true not just for police officers anymore, because first responders, firefighters, and AMTs, one of the things that these killers in San Bernardino did is they were trying to leave behind radio-detonated pipe bombs. And it sounds like the reason why they wanted to do that is that when the first responders arrived, they would detonate them and kill the firefighters and police officers that responded to the call. So this is real, and we celebrate what they do for us every single day, because there is not a single one among us that at some point hasn't needed their help, whether it's a minor fender bender or something far worse. And we're so grateful to them for what they do. There are a significant number of communities in this country, however, where minority communities in particular feel as if their relationship with law enforcement is really bad. And I personally know people that have confronted this. I know a police officer in Miami, Florida, an African-American gentleman who's been pulled over 8 times in the last 2 to 3 years, never given a ticket. So what is he to conclude from that? I'm being pulled over because someone looks at me and thinks I don't belong in this car in this neighborhood. And it upsets people. The point is, no matter how we feel about it, if you have a significant percentage of the American family, particularly young African-American males, but other minorities, who feel as if they're somehow looked at differently, whether we agree with them or not, the fact that they feel that way is an issue we've got to confront as a society. We have to be, and look, it's a lot of instances it's tough. You have an 18-year-old kid who commits a burglary, stupid, does this burglary. They hire a public, or maybe he isn't even committing the burglary. It was just part of 3 people that were involved in this. They all got arrested. They assign him a public defender. The public defender has 5,000 cases they're handling. So the public defender says, just plead guilty. You'll get a slap on the wrist. He pleads guilty. He's now got a conviction on their record. Then they try to go out, turn their life around, and get hired, and no one will hire them because they got a conviction on their record. So they get angry, they get upset, they get disenchanted. Or an 18-year-old interacts with the criminal justice system, and instead of diverting them early, hopefully we can save this person, they get locked up. Basically, these prisons become trade schools for criminals, where other criminals are teaching you what they do when they get out. Then they get out, and they're now stigmatized for the rest of their life. So we've got to confront all of this. A lot of this is societal. It's not government laws. A lot of it is we have a breakdown in our culture. And it's manifesting itself. Look, there is a consequence to broken families. And a lot of these kids are being raised in less than ideal circumstances, not just in minority communities. But when you have a child being raised by their grandmother, who's also raising 5 other kids, because dad has never been around, and mom is working 2 jobs, is in jail and rehab, or moved in with her boyfriend, this is you've got a lot of strikes against you. This is a difficult thing to deal with. These are societal issues we're confronting. It's real. So I do think it's important that as a president that understands both perspectives but doesn't exacerbate it. Yes, there have been instances in this country that I can't justify, and neither can you. You've seen some of these videos, okay? And they're troubling. And you've had other cases where we haven't been fair to law enforcement, where we've allowed lies to be perpetuated about what really happened. And as a result, you have police officers today that feel more targeted than ever, especially in some places when they hear this rhetoric. So we've got an issue here we need to confront. Let's not exaggerate. The overwhelming percentage of people that serve us, and I mean in the 90s of people that serve us in law enforcement, are good people that are doing the best they can in an increasingly difficult society. And then we got an issue that we've got to address, especially with young African-American males who feel locked out of the promise of America. And they're a significant percentage of the American family. We can't be a great country if we don't address that. And you know who the first people to tell you that will be? Law enforcement. The ones that are patrolling those neighborhoods, that's why they get involved after work. That's why some of the best youth sports programs in America are run by law enforcement. Because they'd rather deal with these kids when they're 7 and 8 than have to deal with them when they're 18 or 19 and committing crimes. So I think we can figure this out, but we have to have a president that is a source of unity for America. Not someone that looks to use these issues as a way to pit us against each other in order to win the next election. Because presidents, and what presidents do and say, has consequences. And when you have a president that has spent 7 years pitting us against each other in order to get to 51% in the next election, you see the consequences of it. We won't have that when I'm president. So I want to thank you all for being here today. I'm really asking you for your vote. I need your help to get this done. I look forward. I know that some of you are going to take your time and analyze this process as you should. You are hiring someone that you're going to have to live with for the next 4 to 8 years. So it's got to be someone you like to begin with. But more importantly, you're doing so at an important time in our nation's history. Our identity as a nation is at stake. And I guess my point to you is, I know that times are tough. I know the issues we face are not easy. But we can address these things. Every generation before us did. Now it's our turn. And we're going to do it. And when we do, this is what history is going to say about us. That like every generation before us, we did our part. We confronted our challenges. We embraced our opportunities. and we left America a better place than we found it. So thank you, and God bless you. Thanks for having me. Merry Christmas.
Alright guys, that is a wrap on that Marco Rubio event out in New Hampshire. I know many of you in the chat room excited to see a speech from a different presidential candidate. We try to give all presidential candidates equal time. However, we just stream what we're sent from Fox National. So if Fox National sends us a feed, we share it with you. So some of you may wonder, how come we never show John Kasich? Or how come we don't show, you know, Mike Huckabee? Well, we don't get those feeds. It's probably because they're not doing that well in the polls, relatively speaking. Just my take. All right, guys, so it is 11:43. Here are some of our top stories. Before I get to some of these top stories, though, I want to play just some stories that were sent to us from Fox National instead, because I haven't played these for you yet, and I've already talked about all of these, and I understand that some of you are now just joining us and may have missed it the first time I talked about it. So, you know what, let's touch upon it really quickly. Sergeant Bo Bergdahl, arraigned today, did not enter a plea. Let me go ahead and pull up that Bergdahl video for you. Stand by. There it is. His arraignment was scheduled in Fort Bragg. Let's see. Give me a second. It always takes forever for these videos to load. Bo Bergdahl faces charges of desertion and misbehavior before the enemy. He deferred entering a plea this morning against those charges. Bergdahl, accused of deserting his unit in 2009 and then being held captive by the Taliban in Afghanistan for 5 years. And bullet point number 2 is Trump versus Clinton.
It was yet another late Saturday night debate for Democrats that could help shield frontrunner Hillary Clinton from much scrutiny over gaffes. Though at least one of Clinton's comments managed to break through anyway, as Donald Trump hotly disputed the claim that ISIS is using videos of the Republican frontrunner to recruit more terrorists.
I will demand an apology from Hillary. She should apologize. She lies about emails. She lies about Whitewater. She lies about everything.
While a Clinton aide said today, hell no, she will not apologize, the nonpartisan PolitiFact's Truthometer determined her statement was false.
Not referring to a specific video, but he is being used in social media by ISIS.
Though on Saturday night, Clinton seemed to have specific videos in mind.
They are going to people showing videos of Donald Trump insulting Islam and Muslims in order to recruit more radical jihadists.
In fact, ISIS has promoted at least one propaganda video using her husband, former President Bill Clinton, as well as other top Democrats and Republicans. In the debate, the former Secretary of State also stumbled over her ties to President Obama on battling ISIS.
We now finally are where we need to be. We have a strategy and a commitment to go after ISIS.
Clinton aides quickly clarified she was referring to a United Nations resolution seeking an end to the civil war in Syria, though the only other woman in the race was not buying it.
No, Mrs. Clinton, we are not where we need to be in the fight against ISIS.
All of this could sting in the general election, so Clinton has a new TV ad trying to deal with it head on.
I will get up every single day and do whatever it takes to make sure our country is safe.
Though for now, Clinton is still coasting in the nomination battle, as Democratic Socialist Senator Bernie Sanders used the debate to largely pull back from attacking Clinton over allegations she and the Democratic National Committee conspired to overplay charges of a data breach by his camp.
Yes, I apologize.
Clinton had no major mistake to shake up the basic dynamic of the race. She's coasting to the Democratic nomination, and the party has helped smooth the way. The next debate is in mid-January, on a Sunday, when there will be not just one, but two NFL playoff games. In Washington, Ed Henry, Fox News.
All right, guys, that is a wrap on that story. It looks like Jeb Bush is speaking live in New Hampshire now. Let's go ahead and listen in on this event, this town hall.
The amazing thing happened was that he kept us safe. He used America's strength as a source as a strategy to be able to take down the Soviet Union and to take down the Iron Curtain.
So I gave a speech about the challenge of our time, and we have many. But the one challenge of our time that is unique to this era is the threat of Islamic terrorism. Yes, Mr. President, it is radical Islamic terrorism. Call it for what it is, because if you don't, you can't create a strategy to deal with it. This is a group of people now in the form of a caliphate, the size of Indiana, 30,000 battle-tested Islamic radical terrorists, receiving hundreds of millions of dollars of stolen money through kidnapping, stealing oil, basically hijacking towns like Mosul that has 800,000 people, holding people hostage so they can carry out jihad. Every day they exist in the form of a caliphate is a victory for them. This president had a policy of containment, and he bragged about it. And every time he brags, it seems like something bad happens. So watch out when President Obama has a press conference and talks about great success, because normally we find out the exact opposite. In this case, the tragedy of Paris, France, happened shortly thereafter when he said ISIS has been contained. And then the tragedy of San Bernardino. And this will not end unless we have a strategy to destroy ISIS. At the Reagan Library, I laid that out. It requires getting the lawyers off the backs of the warfighters of the greatest fighting force known to man, the United States military. It requires, instead of using higher standards for warfighting, use the standards that we've always applied, the standards of the international standards of fighting wars. Do you know that 75% of the sorties that go to try to destroy elements of ISIS go back without dropping their ordinances because they haven't gotten approval necessary from 3 levels in the military? That is not how you fight. That's a law enforcement exercise where the civil liberties of truck drivers, where you send out leaflets to them for crying out loud, because God forbid they might not be part of ISIS, even though they're transporting stolen ISIS oil to convert to money to create war against us. Look, in a Bush administration, the first thing we would do is stop sending leaflets out and start bombing the tankers to lessen the amount of money. I think you'd have fewer truck drivers driving if that was the case. We have to have a strategy of destroying ISIS by creating a no-fly zone in Syria, by creating safe zones in Syria, so that the people, 4 million refugees, don't go off into refugee camps and go to Europe. They stay there, because we will create a breeding ground of Islamic terrorism and a jihad if we don't do that. We need to arm an army Sunni-led in Syria and train them and have people on the ground that know what they're doing to be able to create an option between ISIS and Assad. The only way that you can do this based on the lessons of history is to have a plan to create the security so that we can get out. We need to embed our troops with the Iraqi military. We need to re-engage with the Sunni tribal leaders in Anwar province. And we need to arm directly the Kurds. That is a strategy. And that requires American leadership. This president and his possible successor on the Democratic side do not believe that the United States is a force for good, that our leadership is actually a force for good. I do. I believe that America, only when America leads, can good things be accomplished. When we pull back and talk about the community of nations, when we lead from behind, we're not going to solve the problems. Look, we don't have to be the world's policeman. but we sure as heck better lead. Donald Trump believes that the United States can't lead. He actually 2 months ago said ISIS wasn't a threat. It is. He's wrong. He said that Hillary Clinton would be the best person to negotiate the deal with Iran. She isn't. He's wrong. He gets his foreign policy and military advice from the shows. He shouldn't. He's wrong. He's wrong about Vladimir Putin being a great guy. Former KGB agent who has created repression in his own regime, who sees our weakness and tries to take advantage of it, who wants to see a weak America. He doesn't want to see a strong America. Donald Trump is wrong. His answer about the nuclear triad, did you see it? Wow, that was a doozy. These are serious times. We need a serious leader, someone who has a steady hand. This is not entertainment. This is electing a president of the United States. And here's my pledge to you. I will be a commander-in-chief, not an agitator-in-chief, not an entertainer-in-chief, not a divider-in-chief. I will listen to the military, create a strategy, and I will keep us safe, along with the greatest fighting force known to man. And by the way, after that, when the men and women of the military come home, they are deserving of the best possible care that this government should provide. And it is shameful. It is absolutely shameful of the scandals of the Veterans Administration. 340,000 employees there. They had a challenge to get waiting lists down for vets because of the numbers that were coming back. They weren't capable of actually assessing the access to the Veterans Administration. These waiting lists were long, literally more than a year long. So they started bonusing employees to be able to get the waiting list down. Here's the deal. They forgot to give the veterans the care. They took them off the list. They didn't give them care. Some veterans died, and only 3 Veteran Administration employees were fired. In a Bush administration, there'll be heads rolling out of the Veterans Administration. We will not tolerate the kind of corruption and sheer ineptitude that exists. We'll reform the career civil service system so that you can fire people for sheer incompetence. We'll take the Army Corps of Engineers and put it in place to be able to build out the facilities. There's a facility in Aurora, Colorado that was supposed to cost $300 million. It now is at $1.8 billion in terms of cost overrun. Our government does not represent the greatness of our country, and it never will. But it sure as heck ought to be better than the sheer incompetence that exists today, whether it's the Office of Personnel Management or the IRS or the rollout of healthcare.gov, a website that probably, there's someone in Berlin that could probably have opened that website for $1 million instead of $800 million. It had been operational on day one. Probably would have been designed right here in the community college. Our government has to be a lot less incompetent if we're going to be successful in making sure that we do the things that we know the government should do. And we got to grow the economy at a far faster rate as well. I know how to do this. I don't talk about these things because I was privileged to serve in Florida. You may have heard of our state. It's a fairly complex state. It's purple, best way to describe it. 500,000 more Democrats than Republicans. And I applied conservative principles each and every day, never veering from my core beliefs, and I moved the needle, if you will. The state of Florida led the nation in job growth during my 8 years. 1.3 million net new jobs were created. The government shrunk by 13,000 workers, but the private sector, we had the most number of small businesses starting up on a net basis. We led the nation in job growth. Income grew by 4.4%. The government was reduced as it relates to the size of the income of our state. I turned the whole system upside down, not to benefit a few people or those that gave me money or all the things that people talk about in politics. I created a system where people had a chance to rise up. We created the first statewide voucher program, the second and the third. We changed the system of education that was more focused on learning rather than the economic interest of the adults. All of this required a lot of fighting. You may see the faint scar marks on my forehead because I just didn't talk about it on cable news. I didn't brag about filing an amendment and argue about its success. I actually took big conservative ideas and implemented them, and the net effect was Florida was on the move. We need that kind of leadership in Washington, D.C. Imagine a country that's growing at 4% per year rather than 2% per year. That's my vision. And it'll require dramatic change on how we tax, how we regulate, embracing the energy revolution in our midst, focusing on building a significantly more competitive America, making sure the skills gap is eliminated, where people can't get jobs because they don't have the skills to fill them and the jobs go elsewhere. We can do this. I know we can do it because I had a chance to do it as a governor of a swing state like Florida. The final thing I'll tell you is that the left, I believe, views all of us kind of in varying degrees as we all have liabilities. We all have, life's not fair, effectively. That's the message from the left. Life's not fair, I'll take care of you. Life's not fair, someone else is benefiting from your not being able to achieve whatever you want to achieve. Life's not fair because someone is making more money. We hear it all the time. It's this divide. It's pushing one side down to make the other side look good. And the solution is always another government program, another regulation, more power in Washington, D.C. And the net effect is that we are now struggling. There are 6 million more people in poverty than the day that Barack Obama got elected president. Disposable income for the great middle of our country is down $2,300 since the day he was inaugurated. That is a ton of money annually that is lost. Money that could go to be able to provide for a quality education for your child, or maybe buy a new car, or maybe take a vacation, or maybe provide a little bit of support while you're taking care of your frail elder mom or dad. All of these things are how life plays out for all of us in our own unique ways. For us to win, we have to reject the idea that people are liabilities that have to be managed, particularly through a centralized government, and believe that life is a gift from God, that it is truly inspired, that everybody has a contribution to make, that everybody has value, and all of us together reaching our full potential will create more prosperity, more benefits than any government program ever created. That's what I believe. I'll conclude with a story. This is a story of a young woman, now 25 years old, who I met last year. Her name is Denisha Merriweather. She's an African-American woman who was born on the other side of the tracks, as they say. I, for one, reject that notion that your destiny is defined by where you're born. It shouldn't be that way in this extraordinary country. It should be how you pursue your dreams, the effort that you make. The purpose of your life should define your success. That's how it's always been, and that's the way it should be. Denisha got a chance to pursue her life as a young girl, and she was not doing that well. In fact, she was held back 2 years in a row in third grade because of a policy that I set up, ending social promotion in third grade. A pretty dramatic, radical proposal, but the idea is by the time you get to fourth grade when you're reading to learn, if you can't read, you can't learn. I know that sounds like a crazy idea, but too many kids are held back because they never given the chance to have the skills to read. They can't do science, math, history, anything. And the gaps that grow make it harder for the whole system to work. So we said enough of this nonsense. No more. There's going to be a real gate. And Denisha didn't get through it 2 years in a row. But her mom, her godmom, found out about the Florida Corporate Tax Scholarship Program. The first and largest voucher program, second voucher program in the country. Ours was the first, a previous one. 80,000 low and moderate income kids go to private schools because I took on the very powerful teachers unions and bureaucracies and school boards that didn't want to change. And Denisha got to go to a Christian school. Her godmother thankfully found out that she was qualified. And I wasn't there, but I promise you in that first week, the teacher put her arm around Denisha and said, I love you. You're capable. You can do this. I'm going to make sure that you do it. And she overcame the 2 years that she was held back. She graduated with her age group. She graduated from college, the first in her family to do so. And she's now getting a master's this year at the University of South Florida. We will win when we're on the side of the Denisha Merriweathers of this world that want a chance to pursue their dreams as they see fit. We tear down the barriers to lift people up. They'll do it. We're Americans. We do that regularly. We need to restore that sense that we can do these things. We need to make sure people have the chance to achieve earned success. That's my mission. And I'm so excited to be able to share my love of country and the enthusiasm that I believe we're on the verge of the greatest time to be alive. But we have to fix these big, complex things in Washington, and I have the skills to do it. I ask for your support in February. The people of New Hampshire are going to decide who the next President of the United States is. It's a serious undertaking, and I know you will take it seriously. Thank you all very much. Thanks for being here. And Merry, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays as well. Yeah. There's a microphone right behind you. No, I was just thinking of leaving.
My name's Doreen Baker, and I'm from Berlin, New Hampshire. My question is, I understand that the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, he's bringing in about maybe 200,000 Syrian immigrants in their country.
Yeah.
And my concern is, how are we going to keep our borders safe from people like ISIS coming in here? And how do you differentiate? And they would come in maybe to visit their own family of how many, 20,000 we're supposed to have?
10, I think, or 20.
Something like that. So
great question. First, I don't think we have, this administration has not given me the confidence that they have adjusted their screening process for refugees to take into account this radical Islamic terrorist threat. It's not that 4 million refugees are all Islamic terrorists. Right. Some of them are maybe sympathize with the group. Very few would be terrorists. But we saw what happened in Paris. I mean, it is a reality. You can't ignore it. And so I do support the idea of pressing the pause button to determine how we should screen these folks. Secondly, so as it relates to the Canada issue, there's going to have to be safeguards in place to make sure that we secure the border, of course, but we also have a relationship with Canada that makes it where we know who's coming in and why. Secondly, we have a bigger issue most immediately, which is the visa waiver program. Have you all heard about that? Right. This is a program that expedites people coming in and out of our country, that we can go to Germany and they can come here a lot easier, and it's great for trade, it's great for commerce, it's great for tourism. I heard last night at the hotel in Conway, there were people from Europe here. They came on a visa waiver program. They're spending their hard-earned money in the Granite State. We're happy about that, right? But here's the problem. We now have citizens of these countries that may be visiting Syria and Iraq. They have a challenge of radical Islamic terrorism in their midst, citizens that have been radicalized. We have to know who they are. Their passports have to be at the same level of technology that our passports are. We have to require more vigilance by our European allies. Across the board, we need to create a strategy to deal with this. Here's what we shouldn't do. We shouldn't say we're going to ban all Muslims. Banning all Muslims means that Indians, Pakistanis, Indonesians that have nothing to do with this threat would not be allowed in. Banning Muslims will send a signal to the Kurds that their love of our country and support of the United States was returned by saying, you're not allowed into our country, even though they're the strongest allies and admirers of the United States. I don't know if Donald Trump knows, but the Kurds are Muslim. Banning Muslims makes it impossible to create a coalition with the Turks and the Egyptians and the Jordanians and the Persian Gulf countries to deal with ISIS where it needs to be dealt with, which is in the caliphate, to destroy it. So there are ways to deal with the concerns that you expressed, and I think we need to do that. But we shouldn't take it, this grandiose statement that can never be backed up, that would send a chilling signal to the rest of the world that we're not a reliable ally. It wasn't a serious response. And here's the problem with it. The president the day before gave what I thought was a pretty bad speech, where he didn't alleviate our concerns, he actually heightened concerns. The only time he got animated was to talk about gun control. Well, what happened in San Bernardino is not a gun control problem. It's a radicalization of a couple, and we need to learn from that to be able to protect the homeland. And he needs to give us assurances that there are efforts underway to do just that. He did the exact opposite. But no one talks about that anymore. Instead of having a debate about what the tangible things we could do, we're debating the grandiosity of Donald Trump's words that aren't serious.
Thank you.
Thank you. I promise I won't talk about Trump again. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm Tom Pitford. I'm a retired school teacher, 38 years in Berlin. And one of the reasons I support you is the fact that I think you have the right idea about the coalition. I think your father had the right idea back during the Gulf War. He wanted to get rid of Saddam Hussein, who attacked Kuwait. And he said, we'll get all the countries together, including France and Britain and whatnot, and we'll get rid of Saddam and send him back into Iraq. And he did. So I think you have the right idea about ISIS as far as getting a coalition of countries together. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Well, look, we can't do it alone. We can't be the world's policeman. This has to ultimately be an Arab-led effort. But we have to be the catalyst for that. And right now, if you look at the Arab world, they're saying, well, I'll give you an example. In the Arab capitals, they see the relationship between the United States and Israel and go, wow, if the United States doesn't have a good relationship with its strongest ally, Israel, how can we get a deal? I mean, think about it. We've basically, there's light between the United States and Israel today. We should have a strong commitment to Israel because it sends a signal of seriousness that we're not abandoning the region. Then we have to engage with the Arab leaders to show that we're the strong horse, that we're still there. I never believed that we should do this as an occupying force or that we should do it as the world's policeman. There's a difference between being a cop on the beat and being the mayor, if you will, or being the governor, or being the president, being the leader. That's what we have to do, because no one else can do it. The Russians would love this role. This is why, this love affair between Donald Trump and, I just said I broke my rule already. This love affair, all you got to do is just flatter Donald Trump, and he immediately, just like, oh yeah, he's beautiful, he's fantastic, he's great. No, he isn't. Vladimir Putin is not great. He's not a great man. He's a bully, and he's a thug. And he has his own national, his own national objective, and it's not in concert with ours. So the void that we pull back creates a void, and at warp speed, Putin's trying to reestablish his position in the Middle East. Just to remind everybody, 1973, the Russians, the Soviets, were kicked out of the Middle East after the 7-Day War. And Sadat came to the United States when Nixon and Kissinger, masters of statecraft.
Leader. Someone with experience. Someone that I know is going
And it looks like Fox National has cut out of Jeb Bush to give us Hillary Clinton in Iowa.
I wanted to invite someone that is going to make sure that I and every other young person in this country has the brightest future possible. And that is why I invited Hillary Clinton. My principal said something very powerful last week. He said, all too often, big politicians forget about the little guy. And in this case, he was talking about small towns and small schools like what we have here. And Hillary Clinton is paying attention to the little guy today. And, that's amazing. And really, I just think that's the kind of person that Hillary is. She goes around and she listens to the problems of the American people, and she wants to help solve them. And that's why I'm proud to support Hillary Clinton. I am proud to be her youngest precinct captain at the caucus here in Kyoto. And I am proud to say that she has my vote in my very first election. So, Kyoto High School, it is an honor for us to introduce to you former First Lady, former Senator, and former Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton.
That was terrific. Thank you so much. Megan, thank you. Kylie, thank you. Tyler, thank you so much. Wow, I'll tell you, that's just an incredible introduction, but I have to give you the story that's behind the scenes. I started seeing these young women showing up at my events, and they were holding signs inviting me to Kyoto. And I don't know how many times you did it, but you really made an impression on me. And one time after I finished an event, I was shaking hands, and they were there and said, would you come to our school? And I said, well, and they had a sign. I said, is your school in Kyoto? And they said, yes. I said, well, I'll try. I don't want to make a promise I can't keep. So I said, well, I'll try. And then the next time I saw them, they were at another event, holding their signs, raising their hands, and as I was calling on them, I said, I'm really coming. I will come to Kyoto. Anybody who has worked as hard as you have, I'm coming. So, to Abby and Megan and Kylie and to your teacher, Skylar, because it takes a teacher to inspire this kind of activism by students. And I really applaud you for teaching. And to Mr. Carlson and all of the staff and faculty here at the school, and to so many of the parents and grandparents. I'm going to be a grandparent again, I have to tell you. It's like the best news for me, and it's the best club I've ever been in, and other residents of this area, thank you so much. And I'm delighted that my very good friends, Tom and Christy Vilsack, could be with me, because one of the things that I hope we can talk about today is what's happening in rural America and what can be done. And Tom, as many of you know, who served as your governor, is the Secretary of Agriculture and is doing so much to try to promote a diverse economy in rural America. And I think I'll give him a chance to say something about it. And Christy, who has been an educator for so many years, is now taking her expertise and working on behalf of education around the world with the Agency for International Development. So I'm thrilled both of them can be with me. I want to just make a few comments. First, I apologize for being late. Turns out we couldn't land in the airport here because of visibility, so we had to go elsewhere and drive. So please forgive me for being late. But what I wanted to do was to make a few comments and then to throw it open to any questions that anybody might have on any issues that might be on your mind. Let me start by saying that I think our country needs a president who can both get the economy working for everybody, not just those at the top, and keep us safe and secure here at home and around the world, maintaining America's leadership, and getting our democracy, which is the most extraordinary human invention, to continue to work and promote freedom and opportunity for everyone. And that's a big order, but it's nothing that is out of reach if we have an election this time that really tries to set out the choices that Americans are going to be facing, starting right here in Iowa on February 1st with the caucus. Now, there are big differences between how I see what we need to do in our country and what you hear from the candidates who are running on the Republican side. And I think that's what an election should really be about. What are the differences? What are the values? What are the visions that we have? And how do we pull people together to achieve them? So just very quickly on the economy, I think that our economy works better when we have a Democrat in the White House. I think that it shows over many years that we have a history of lower unemployment, higher incomes, and you are 4 times more likely to have a recession when you have a Republican in the White House. Now, why is that? Well, I think in part it's because if you just go back and look the last 35 years, don't go back even further than that, we've had 5 presidents, 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats, and the Republicans have followed an economic policy that hasn't worked for the vast majority of Americans. And each of them left economic problems for their successors. Now, in my husband's case, he inherited a recession and a national debt that had been quadrupled in the last 12 years. And so he had to get to work, and at the end of his 8 years, we had seen the creation of 23 million new jobs. Incomes went up for everybody, not just those at the top. And we lifted more people out of poverty than at any time in recent history. and ended up with a balanced budget and a surplus. Early on in his presidency, my husband was asked, what do you uniquely bring to Washington? And he thought for a minute and he said, arithmetic. You got to make it add up. And you have to do the right things in the budget and in making partnerships with business to really help people get ahead and stay ahead. Well, I joined the Senate in January of 2001. I was elected from New York, and I got there, and I was pretty excited because I thought, if we have a balanced budget and a surplus, that means we have some opportunity to do some really good work in America, really invest in education, really invest in research and science, extend the life of the Social Security Trust Fund and Medicare. I mean, we had some business we could do. Unfortunately, the incoming Republican administration went back to the same policies that, with all respect, don't work. Cut taxes on the wealthy, get out of the way of corporations, and see what happens. Well, we saw what happened. We had the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. After the 2008 election, President-elect Obama called and asked me to come to Chicago to meet with him, and I didn't know why. It turns out he wanted me to be Secretary of State, but before we got started, he said to me, it's so much worse than they told us. We were losing 800,000 jobs a month. 9 million Americans ended up losing their jobs, and 5 million homes were lost. And $13 trillion in family wealth was wiped out. People had to sell homes, cars, go into their retirement funds, their college funds, and most people haven't yet recovered from that. The economy has recovered. We've gotten back 13 million jobs, but most people haven't had an increase in their incomes, and most people are not as well off financially yet as they were before that happened to us. So we're going to have an election about what direction do we want to go with the economy. And I'll tell you what I want to do. I want to get incomes rising again. And that means we have to create more good-paying jobs. And I want to double down on infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, our tunnels, our airports, our ports. We should be rebuilding America. Not only will it put so many people to work, but it will also make us stronger economically. I want us to invest more in advanced manufacturing. I have a tax credit to try to get more businesses to do that. And you know what I've been inspired by? I've been inspired by what you've done here in Iowa when you combine combating climate change and moving toward clean energy with advanced manufacturing, and I'll tell you why. Your governor, when he was there, Tom Vilsack, and thankfully it's been followed in a bipartisan way in Iowa, began to invest more in wind power in Iowa. You now get 1/3 of your electricity from wind. You, Minnesota, and Texas have the highest percentages of getting 30% or slightly more of your electricity from a renewable source. I go around bragging on Iowa all the time because when I say to people, we're going to combat climate change and we're going to have more people working in clean, renewable energy as we transition away from fossil fuels, I can see some folks are skeptical because that maybe is not what they've been told. And then I say, go look at Iowa and look at what's been accomplished here. And it's not just that you've got those turbines moving. It's also that you've taken your community colleges and you've invested in how you train people here to assemble and fix those turbines. Tom and I were at the Des Moines Area Community College together this summer, talking to the young people who are being trained to be machinists and tool and die makers because I was attracted wind turbine manufacturing, and that's advanced manufacturing. And Tom told me there are 8,800 parts in a wind turbine. Somebody's going to make them, somebody's going to install them, and somebody's going to repair them. And you now have more than 7,000 people in this state working in wind. So when you hear from the Republicans, as they like to say, you know, they don't believe in climate change, and when you ask them about it, they say, well, I'm not a scientist. for heaven's sakes, tell them to go talk to a scientist, because it's not only important for us to do this to protect our environment, but it's a great job creator. And I want us to be the 21st century clean energy superpower. And I want young people, like the young people who are here, to be as inspired by that as I was when President Kennedy said we were going to send a man to the moon and bring him back. A lot of people didn't think we could do that. And we did it faster than it was predicted. I want young people in our country to be thinking about all the ways that they can help us combat climate change through clean, renewable energy. And I've set some big goals. I want us to have deployed 500 million solar panels by the end of my first term, and enough clean power electricity to power every home in America by the end of my second term. So we can do these things if we set some big goals, if we stop arguing with each other, pointing fingers with each other, insulting each other, and come together and work to meet some big goals. There's no limit to what we can do. I also want to do more for small business. My father was a small businessman. He had a little small business printing fabrics for draperies, and it made a good living for us. And I see how most of the new jobs in America will come from small business, but we're not doing enough to help small business. I want us to get back doing more to help create and expand small businesses. And I also want to raise the minimum wage, because if you work full time, you should not still be in poverty. And, you know, I believe in hard work. That's how I was raised. But I also believe in being rewarded for your hard work and not being taken advantage of and not being left further behind by the time you finish. So I want to raise that minimum wage. And one of the fastest ways that we can increase incomes in America is making sure that women get paid equally for their work. And you know, one of the reasons why this is still a problem is because under our laws, you can get fired or retaliated against if you ask or find out what somebody else is making where you're working. So we don't even really have good data, but we have a lot of anecdotal data. I met a young man in New Hampshire who said to me, "I want to tell you why I'm for you." I said, "Well, thank you." He said, "I got my first real job when I was 17. I was working as a cashier in the store where my mother worked." He said, "I was really proud because I'd never had a job like that before. So when I brought home my first paycheck, I showed it to my mom, and I saw her face fall. And I asked her what was wrong, and she said, 'They're paying you more than they're paying me, and I've been there 4 years.'" And I said to the young man, "How could that be?" And he said, "Well, I later found out, you know, they basically said to me, you know, we want young men like you in this store. We want you maybe to go into a program to become a manager." And the young man said, "They never offered that to my mother, never even raised it with her." So we're losing, families are losing money that women should be entitled to bring home and add to the family's income. And that means the whole country is not doing as well as we should. I also want to see more businesses sharing profits with their employees. If you help to make a business profitable, the CEOs are not the only ones who should be benefiting. And we have to change our tax code, which is so tilted in favor of those on the top. And I'm going to do everything I can to institute what's called the Buffett rule. I was with Warren Buffett in Omaha last week. I was proud to have his endorsement because he's at least one person who understands it's not enough just for him to be successful financially. He wants everybody to do better, and he wants every millionaire to have to pay at least 30% income tax instead of escaping with 10% or nothing, and we're going to do everything we can to make that a reality. And there's a lot of other loopholes and funny tricks that corporations and millionaires can play in order to pay less, and we're going to go after all of that. I'm also going to do everything I can to defend education. and to make it clear that the best way to improve elementary and secondary education is to actually listen to the teachers and educators who are in the classrooms with our students and not scapegoat them and treat them like they don't have any contribution to make. And I want to say a word about small rural schools like this one, because I know that was the original reason why you all got so excited and why you were stalking presidential candidates. And I don't blame you. And I actually looked up some numbers. You know, Iowa has one of the best education systems in the country and has had for a long time. And I believe, since I grew up in Illinois, we used to take a test they called the Iowa Basic Test. We used to take that test all the time. I wasn't happy about it. But we did it because your education system was viewed as one of the best in the country. And your students have, I think, the second highest ACT scores in the country. And I looked at the average of what Iowa students have, which is higher than the national average. This school's students are higher than the Iowa average. And so, for the life of me, I don't understand why your state government, and I know Governor Branstad vetoed the money that would have come to help this school, and it was a bipartisan agreement. You know, those are hard to come by these days. You had a bipartisan agreement in your legislature for more one-time student funding to help deal with some of the financial challenges that districts like this one have, and Governor Branstad vetoed it. Yet at the same time, you have these laws which require if you have a deficit, you may not be able to be a school district. It doesn't make sense to me. When something is not broke, don't break it, right? And this school district and these schools throughout Iowa are doing a better than average job. Now, I wouldn't keep any school open that wasn't doing a better than average job. If a school's not doing a good job, then, you know, that may not be good for the kids. But when you have a district that is doing a good job, it seems kind of counterproductive to impose financial burdens on it. So the federal government doesn't have a whole lot to do with this. This is mostly state and local decision making. Very little, less than 10%, I think maybe 7% or so of the money that is used to run schools in Iowa comes from the federal government. So therefore, this is primarily a state issue. But as president, what I'm looking for are schools that exceed expectations. And I don't care whether they're urban, suburban, or rural. And where there are small districts like this one, I know you've got online opportunities, and maybe there should be exploration about how you can also share teachers and all the rest of it. But I am very partial toward districts that are doing well. And from everything I can tell, this one is. And so I hope that you're able to work through whatever your financial and political challenges are with the state government and at least have a fighting chance to keep providing the quality of education that produces students like these three young women. I meet a lot of students, and you can be very proud of not only them, but I'm sure so many others, for the way they present themselves, the way they conduct themselves, and how effective they have been in making their case. So when we talk about rural development, you've got to also talk about rural education. And I think we've got to go hand in hand. And maybe Tom will have something more to say about this, because if we're going to diversify the rural economy, we want to make sure that we have the best possible schools in order to produce the students and the adults that are going to be part of that new economy, particularly when it comes to clean energy in Iowa. I also believe we need to do more on early childhood education. A lot of kids are not prepared when they come to school, and they never catch up. So I would like to see us try to help, starting with the most disadvantaged kids, to give them a better early head start, a better universal kindergarten experience so that they can be successful. And then on the other end, we've got to make college affordable, which it isn't right now for a lot of hardworking families. And I have a whole plan about how to do that. I want to make tuition debt-free so you don't have to borrow money if you go to a public college or a university. And I want to help anybody who has debt. Anybody here have student debt? Anybody here have some student debt? Yep. I want to help you refinance that debt the way you can a mortgage or a car payment. Right now you can't, and we ought to be able to get the cost down, and you can save thousands of dollars if we do that for you. And I personally don't think the federal government should be making money off of lending money to students and families for kids to go to college and get their education. So we're going to change a lot of what is now the kind of challenges that people face when it comes to getting enough funding to go to college. I also want to defend the Affordable Care Act because we now have 18 million people who are getting health care finally. And I want to do what I can to make it work better, get the costs down, and especially get prescription drug costs down because those are beginning to really go up again. And I will say I disagree with what I understand to be your governor's plan to privatize Medicaid. I worry about, I think it's 500,000 Iowans who are dependent on Medicaid, and a lot of people who have disabilities, who need chronic care, who are in nursing homes. And so I worry about what's going to happen to them when you shift to a for-profit model. It can be done in an appropriate way, but the way it's been done so far raises questions that I hope people will be trying to, what? Yeah. Well, I'm with you because I don't see why you should have to be put through that. So I'm hoping that this change either can be slowed down or altered in a way that doesn't create that kind of anxiety, because that's what people in Iowa have been telling me, what that young woman just said. And you are under a very tight timeline. Like, okay, tell us what doctors and everything you're going to use, and the information wasn't even available. And if you're responsible for your health, or more emotionally, as we could hear, responsible for your children's health, that's a terrible position to be put into. So I'm hoping that we don't see that happen. I also want to say that we need to do more, and later in Fairfield I'm going to be talking about a plan I have to try to prevent and hopefully eventually cure Alzheimer's, because if the experts tell me, and I've talked with them, that if we put $2 billion a year into Alzheimer's research, in 10 years, we would know a lot more about it, we would have a lot more information, and we could maybe head off what's going to happen. We have 5 million people right now suffering from Alzheimer's. You multiply that by the families taking care of them. It's related, we now know, to Parkinson's and other what are called neurodegenerative diseases, and it's going to cost more and more money. Families' money, government money, Medicare money. So we need to make a big investment. It's the 6th leading cause of death right now, and we don't invest in it the way we do in heart disease, cancer, and other diseases that we have to try to cure and prevent. So I think we've got to do more on caregiving. We also have to make mental health problems get the same treatment as any other kind of health problems. And this is something that also I hear about all across the state. When somebody says anxiety, when somebody says depression, when somebody says bipolar, when somebody says, they're suffering and they can't get care, that's painful, and it's also very counterproductive and usually ends up being more costly. And then substance abuse. My very first trip to Iowa, from Davenport to Council Bluffs, I heard about substance abuse. And then I heard about it everywhere I went. And there's a very serious problem with addiction to opioids, the pain-killing drugs, that now people have moved from them to heroin. And we had more deaths by overdoses last year than we did by car crashes. This is just ripping families apart, and we're not even trying to make a difference in helping people the way we should. And it's also really expensive. I'll give you just a quick story. I was in Reno, Nevada, and they have opened up a facility starting with alcoholics. Now they're moving on to drug addicts to try to get them off the streets and get them into a place where they can become sober, get off their addiction, do some work, get some help. And it's run by the sheriff's office and Catholic Charities. And the reason they did it is because they kept picking up the same people all the time, throwing them in jail, sent them to the emergency room, and then they'd see them again in 30 days. And it just was a revolving door. So they went to people and they said, we won't send you to jail if you'll come to this facility. You have to live there. You have to be tested every day. We'll give you something to do. We'll give you counseling and support. So they got a lot of responses from people who said, nobody's ever asked to help me before. I went to visit it. The sheriff told me they've saved $4 million the first year. It's a lot cheaper to put somebody in a facility like that than in prison, in the emergency room, in hospital. So we got to think differently about how we deal with the problems folks have. Let me say a quick word about the importance of our national security right now. I've been speaking out about what we need to do to combat ISIS, to protect ourselves, and I've laid out a 3-point plan about how to deprive them of territory in the Middle East, how to disrupt and dismantle their global network of terrorism, and how to make our country safer. And there's a lot behind it about what we have to do to help. And I think it's a very serious challenge we face. And so with the first issue about how to deprive them of territory, that takes air support from the Americans and others. It also takes us working to build up the military capacity of the Iraqi army, of Sunnis and Kurds who will fight ISIS. There's a battle going on right now in a place called Ramadi, where the Iraqi army, with some American advisors and American air cover, is fighting to take it back from ISIS. We have to disrupt their global network of terrorism, and that means stopping foreign fighters, stopping foreign money, and fighting them on the internet, where they're very successful. And I've talked a lot about how our great tech companies need to help us on this. And they are. I mean, Twitter's taking down accounts, YouTube is taking off terrible videos, Facebook is looking at what is posted by these jihadists. So we will go after them. And here at home, we have to do a better job coordinating between federal, state, and local law enforcement. And we have to do a better job trying to disrupt their communications if we get any chance to do that. And that's another area that the tech companies need to be helping us with. But I think what you're hearing from some of the Republicans, most particularly Mr. Trump, about Muslims is not only dangerous, it's shameful. It is not the kind of language somebody running to be president of the United States should be using. And it has consequences. It has real consequences. You know, people around the world pay very close attention to our elections. And if you go on Arabic television, as we have, and you look at what is being blasted out with video of Mr. Trump being translated into Arabic, no Muslims coming to the United States, other kinds of derogatory, defamatory statements, it is playing into the hands of the violent jihadists. There is nothing they want more than to be able to claim that the United States is against Islam and against Muslims. And that then lights an even bigger fire for them to make their propaganda claims through social media and in other ways. It also does something else. Our first line of defense in our country has to be Muslim Americans who will work with law enforcement and report suspicious activity. And that's what we did in New York after 9/11. The New York Police Department developed those relationships. because we were worried every single day about another attack, and a lot of effort went into preventing attacks, and sometimes right in the nick of time. So if you have someone running for president who basically says to a group of Americans, I'm talking about Americans, we don't respect you, we don't want you, that creates an atmosphere that is not helpful as we go after anyone inside our own country who is planning or plotting against us. So it's a very serious matter when you hear some of the things that he and unfortunately some of the others have been saying. But I'm very confident in our law enforcement, our security forces, that they can do as much as is humanly possible to protect us. But they need help from the communities in which we all live. Final thing I want to say is that a lot of the positions that the Republican candidates are taking are very much at odds with where I think our country needs to go. I really believe that we've got to work harder together to find common ground. It's not easy. I know that. But it must be our highest priority. And I will go anywhere, anytime to meet with anyone to find common ground, to solve our problems. I will also stand my ground. That's what I've done as First Lady, as Senator, as Secretary of State. I worked with Republicans a lot. And maybe we only agreed on, a small patch of ground, but we worked hard to cultivate that, to try to make something positive happen. That's what I will do as president every single day. And let me just end by saying to you that I get up now thinking about what the future is going to be like for my granddaughter, and then starting later in 2016, what it will be like for the newest edition. But when I think about that, I am focused on not only doing everything I can for her, but also making sure that all of our kids and our grandkids have a chance to live up to their own God-given potential. It really does matter if that's how we feel about all of our children. I'm the granddaughter of a factory worker who came as an immigrant with his family, went to work in the Scranton lace mills in Scranton, Pennsylvania, worked really hard so that he could give his sons a better life, and he did. My mother had a very different experience. She was abandoned and neglected by her parents, sent to grandparents who didn't want her, and by the age of 14, she was working as a housemaid. And so I have seen our country through the eyes of my parents with their very different experiences. Both of them, despite their different upbringings, really loved this country and believed in its promise. Well, so do I. And it's not enough that that promise is available for the granddaughter of a former president and Secretary of State. It needs to be available for the granddaughters of factory workers and farmers and the grandsons of truck drivers and teachers. And that will be my mission as your president, every single day, to do everything I can to make that promise of America real. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you all. Well, you've been very patient, but I'd love to take some questions. Tom, do you want to add anything on the rural development work that you've been doing and that you helped me with in my campaign?
Sure. There are, I think, 4 opportunities for the next president, and Hillary is committed to this. Obviously, production agriculture continues to be the lifeblood of rural areas, and we want to obviously support opportunities in markets for our farmers, but we need to complement that with local and regional food systems that allow smaller producers access to local markets so that they're in a position to set their own price and allow those smaller farmsteads to remain profitable. We obviously want to promote conservation and the opportunities that it creates for more outdoor recreation and ecosystem markets. But the real big opportunity, and the one that Hillary is very supportive of, is the bio-based economy, the ability to take our farm products and the waste product from our farm products and convert them into new energy and fuel sources. We know a lot about that in Iowa. She's a strong proponent of the renewable fuel standard, which is important to me and important to farmers here, but it's important to the country. So when you combine those four opportunities, production agriculture, local and regional food systems, conservation and outdoor recreation, and the bio-based economy, you have the opportunity to create jobs, manufacturing jobs, higher profits for farmers, and it will help create that vibrancy for small communities that will allow granddaughters and grandsons and sons and daughters to be able to have the opportunity to continue to live in places like Kyoto. And that's a goal that I share with Hillary, and I'm convinced she is committed to it. She will be a president that cares about rural America, and it will not forget about it.
Thank you. Thanks. Now, anybody have a question? Okay, this young man right here. Here comes a microphone.
Oh, thanks. Okay, I hope I can do this. Thank you. It's so awesome to be with you. Before my question, I just want to say that if girls want to run the world, we should give a few more minutes for bathroom breaks at the debates.
I'm just glad they had one somewhere.
Yes, I'm glad you got back. But being here at a high school with graduating seniors and others with college on the mind, I feel asking this is important. I'm currently a freshman at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, so I'm fortunate to have Scott Walker as my governor. The only good news is with him not running for president, there's one less clown in the clown car. On a serious note, though, I'm going somewhere. He has signed a bill that cuts almost $300 million from the UW system. My school in particular is taking the largest hit. We have a population with 40% first-generation college students, and it is the most diverse school in Wisconsin. A tuition freeze has been enacted, so what, if anything, could the federal government do to help struggling universities under Republican leadership like Scott Walker or Bruce Rauner?
Well, look, I think this is not just a problem in some states. I think it's a problem everywhere. And, you know, some states have gone further and made deeper cuts, and I know that Governor Walker has also cut a lot of the scholarship aid, a lot of the low-interest lending aid that Wisconsin used to provide for students. I just think this is a very counterproductive approach, because part of what we had is the greatest higher education, public higher education system in the world, and states were part of that. And we still have, I think, the greatest of those institutions, but we're making it so difficult for people to afford to attend them that doesn't add up, doesn't make sense. So under my New College Compact, the federal government would match money that states would begin to put back into higher education so that we could, you know, really try to get the scholarship money up, the work study money up, so that kids who were there could afford to stay there. And I worry that the colleges themselves are not doing enough. I think that tuition has gone up 40%, some of it because of cutbacks from states. You know, states diverted money to highways and particularly prison. You know, the prison construction that we have done over the last 20 years has been very costly, and it's mostly been done at the state level. So I think colleges also have to take a hard look at, you know, what are the costs that they are passing on to students and families. And I think families have to make a contribution, but not beyond their means. You know, that terrible application form that some of you may be looking at now, the FAFSA form, which is just impossible to fill out and doesn't give you really what you need. I think you can just get rid of that, and you could have like a one-page online application. And if families' incomes were below a certain level, they would not have to contribute to the college tuition, but they would have to obviously contribute to living expenses and other costs. And then I think students, you know, this is where I differ with my friends on the Democratic side. They've advocated for free college for everybody. And I do not believe that we should be paying for Donald Trump's kids to go to college. I think we should be paying for middle-class, working families, kids who are poor, who want to get ahead. And I don't think we cannot afford to pay free college for everybody. But we can have debt-free college so that you don't have to borrow much or at all. And that's what I want to see us do. But I do want students to contribute. Maybe it's because I worked. I worked through college. I worked through law school. My husband did as well. We think kids should work. And if you work 10 hours a week, that's a contribution which we think students should make. Because we believe, and I think there's evidence of that, something you work for is going to be more meaningful to you. So there's a lot of ways that we can begin to get the costs down for students and families, but the states have to be part of it. And I will work very hard in a state where if a governor doesn't want to, I'll work directly with the institutions to try to give them the support so that they can make it affordable. Let's see. I see a hand right there. Yes, that young man. Just a minute. Here comes a microphone, so I think you should be able. Okay. We have a microphone for the young man right here in the. There we go.
What are you going to do about border control?
I believe in strong border control, and I have voted for strong border control as a senator. And we have spent a lot of money in the last 10, 12 years strengthening border control. I think border control has to be part of comprehensive immigration reform. Where I part company with some of my counterparts on the Republican side is that I think we should provide a path forward for the people who are already here, the 11 million people who are here and their families and their kids, and at the same time continue to tighten up border control. And it's not just on our southern border. We have to tighten up control in our airports. I was very pleased that the Congress took steps to tighten up what's called the visa waiver system and to tighten up the process of getting a visa to come into our country. And those folks primarily come through airports. They're not crossing the border, they're flying in. And we've got to have tougher border security in our airports as well as on our southern border. And we also have to work with our Canadian friends to make sure we have suitable border security on our northern border. Most of the students here would not remember this, but a very alert border guard up near Seattle caught a guy in 2000 on his way to try to, commit a terrorist act in LA. So we got to be tough on our borders. I am absolutely committed to that. But at the same time, we need to be doing comprehensive immigration reform, and that's how I would proceed as president. Yes, right there. This young woman right there. If you talk to it, it'll, yeah. Don't worry.
Hi. On a similar note, my name is Elise Gingrich. I'm part of a group called Friends of Pastor Max. You have seen me before. ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, has a reputation.
Can you just slow down a little bit? I'm having a hard time. I want to hear you, so just let me slow down a little.
Immigration and Customs Enforcement has a reputation for deporting people who are not on the priority list, such as Pastor Max Villatoro from Iowa City, and also has a reputation for mistreating women and children who are in detention centers run by private companies. So I'm wondering what you would do to hold ICE more accountable and also to possibly bring back people who were unjustly deported from the United States.
Well, first of all, let me say that I agree with you that we should end private prisons and private detention centers. I think that they have become how can I say this? They actually have beds to fill in order to make money, so they want to be sure that people are picked up to fill those beds. I don't think that's the way we should be running detention centers. And a lot of the private prisons are equally suspect on that count. I also believe that we should have better facilities for family detention for women and children, and I would, certainly advocate for that. And I think we need to use more discretion in who we deport. Violent criminals, goodbye as soon as we can get them out. People who are, maybe had a misdemeanor 20 years ago, I think we need to have a slightly different approach. And I know about the gentleman that you mentioned. A lot of the people in the community that he was in for all those years have stood up and advocated for him. So I think we do need to be more careful about deporting quickly the people we need to get out of the country, and being more thoughtful about people who are not risks or security risks to us. But that's why we need to move toward comprehensive immigration reform, so we pull everybody out of the shadows and we register them all. And if they do have a criminal record that is a significant criminal record, they should be deported. If they do not, or if they have a very minor offense or two, then I don't think that we should. But I think that they have to be registered, they have to pay taxes, they have to be, given the chance to, be on a path that would lead eventually to citizenship, and that's the position I've had for, the last many years. I voted for the immigration reform bill in 2007, and I'm going to keep working to try to get that accomplished. Okay, let me walk over here. Here, you stand up, I'll hold this for you.
With all the recent shootings lately all around the country, what is your position on gun control?
It's a really important question. I bet you know, but I'm not sure everybody knows, 90 people a day are killed by guns. That's homicides, suicides, and terrible accidents. And some of the accidents are just heartbreaking. The toddler who finds the loaded gun under the bed, or the kid who's just fooling around with his friend and has never been given, the right attitude or belief about handling guns. Terrible accidents. So that adds up to 33,000 people a year. And I think we have to have common sense gun safety measures. And I support comprehensive background checks, closing the gun show loophole, closing the online loophole, closing what's called the Charleston loophole. The Charleston loophole is the loophole that was put into the Brady bill, background check bill, which said that, if you go to buy a gun, the seller only has 3 business days before he has to sell it to you while they're trying to run the check. The young man in Charleston went in for the gun, and he came back after 3 days, and they hadn't finished the check. If they had been able to finish it, they would have gotten the information from the county that was being put into the computer system, which said he wasn't eligible to buy a gun. He had a felony record. He took that gun, and he went to the Bible study in that church and murdered 9 people who had invited him in to be part of their Bible study. And he sat there, and then he killed them. Now, I know that there's a huge debate about this, but if you look at where our country really is, 92% of Americans believe in that comprehensive background check and closing those loopholes. And in fact, 85% of gun owners believe that. And yet, members of Congress and legislators and others just do whatever the gun lobby tells them to do. And I would love to see responsible gun owners stand up and say, you don't represent me anymore. We're going to form our own group, our own organization, because we have guns because of, hunting or sports shooting or collection. They're part of our tradition. My father taught me how to shoot. I've been hunting, but always with really responsible people. And I think we have got to call a halt to this. And it is heartbreaking that we're still having these mass shootings. I mean, the numbers of people who are murdered every day, And then during the course of a week or a month should get us all to say, wait a minute, we've got to do something about this. And we can do it consistent with the Constitution. So I am going to keep fighting for it, and I will do what I can to end the absolute immunity from liability that the Congress voted. I voted against it. Basically, gun manufacturers and sellers are the only business in America that you cannot sue for anything. They are totally free from liability. And let me just give you two examples. Remember the guy who went into the movie theater in Aurora, Colorado and just started shooting and murdered all those people? Well, he murdered this young woman, and her parents, went to the trial, tried to understand what had happened, got the information, and realized that he'd bought all this ammunition online where people selling it had no idea who he was. He could have been a terrorist. They didn't know. He turned out to be a different kind of murderer. So they sued the online website where he got his ammunition. Not only was the case thrown out because there's absolute immunity, this poor grieving family was asked to pay the legal bills of the NRA that had defended the website. I mean, just think about that. And then the worst thing is just after San Bernardino, people said to the Congress, wait a minute, we know you're not going to go as far as we would like you to go, but at least make it prohibited so that no one who is on the no-fly list for potential terrorists can buy a gun in America. I mean, we have information that terrorists basically say to one another, don't worry about getting a gun in America, that's easy. Don't worry about that. So, okay, at least give the information about who's on that list so that law enforcement can try to prohibit them from buying a gun. And the Republicans in Congress said, no, we're not even going to do that. So we are in a very difficult period here because I don't know all the reasons why all these murders are happening. I don't understand all the motivation. Clearly, some people are gang members. That's what a lot of the shooting in some of our big cities turns out to be. Some are mentally ill. That's another one of the problems we have. But I had a woman who works with, remember Columbine, the murder in the high school? Those two boys, they lived in intact homes. They went to church. They looked like ordinary kids, and then they plotted this massacre of their fellow students. And I met a woman in Colorado whose father was one of the teachers who was murdered. And the way she deals with her grief is that she got a degree in social work and psychology, and she works with offenders because she's trying to understand what goes through somebody's mind, what makes them do this. And she said, I want you to remember something. She told me, she said, I was working with a man who was in a fight with his wife, and the police came, and it was broken up, and he served some time in jail. And she said, I was talking to him, and he said, I never understood before. He said, but, if I'd had a gun that day, I would have murdered her. I just had no control over how I was feeling. So everybody needs to take a deep breath here and try to figure out what we're going to do. And I will continue to speak out about this because when you lose 33,000 people, there's got to be something more we can do than just send our thoughts and prayers when more are murdered. That just isn't something that I think we can live with. So, all right, I know we've got one more. Okay. Yes, this young woman right here. Yeah.
What are you going to do about all this bullying? Not just because of just people who want to be mean, but mental and physical and diseases that people have that they're able to live with every day.
Can you tell me a little bit more about why that's on your mind?
I have asthma, and occasionally I've heard people talking behind my back about not wanting to be near me because I have asthma. I mean, people, it's not contagious. It's not going to.
That was really brave. You know, bullying has always been around, but it seems to have gotten somehow easier and more widespread because of social media and the internet. People can say something about somebody without having to look them in the eye or see them walk by. And so I think we all need to be aware of the pain and the real anguish that bullying can cause. And sometimes it's because of a condition like asthma, or how many of you have ever read the Wonder stories about the boy with the terrible facial deformity? Have you read that? And you know what? You've read that? I heard about this. What an incredible book. It's mostly for kids, 11 to 15 or something, but it tells you the story from the point of view of somebody who has a very disfigured face that he was born with. And he's had countless operations, and he still has a very odd, unattractive look. But his parents have loved him, and his big sister has tolerated him, and he has some friends, and he talks about what it's like to be looked at like that. And it's a great lesson for anybody, no matter what our age, about how words can hurt and how bullying somebody can make them really feel left out and in despair, and can cause some terrible things sometimes to happen. So I guess in school, what I would hope is that people would protect each other from that and speak out against it if it happens, because I don't think a lot of people who do it really understand how it makes other people feel. So you're standing up and saying that, I think, is important. And I think parents should be, asking their own kids, hey, is everybody treating you okay? And are you being kind to everybody else? And I want to end with two points about this, because we do have more awareness of bullying, so you can go online and you can hear from people about what they've done to try to not get upset about it, and how to try to talk to people who might be acting that way. So we have more resources than we've ever had before to try to protect people. But as I say, the internet makes it really hard, because you can say something nasty about somebody, and look, you are looking at somebody who's had a lot of terrible things said about me, and I am well aware of the fact that it's really easy to do that, and you just say it and you send it around the world. And luckily I'm old enough that it doesn't particularly bother me, but I can't even imagine what it's like to be, a young person in today's world where that's coming at you all the time. So I do think we all have to speak up and speak out about trying to create an atmosphere where bullying is not appropriate, where it's not, allowed, where people don't buy into it. And the other thing I want to say is this, and especially because, we're in Christmas week, and I hope all of you have a wonderful Christmas with your family and those who are close to you. And I've said this a couple of times in this election recently, and I know it's sort of odd coming from a person running for president, but I really do think we need more love and kindness in our country. I think we are not treating each other with the respect and the and the care that we should show toward each other. And that's why it's important to stand up to bullies wherever they are, and why we shouldn't let anybody bully his way into the presidency. Because that is not who we are as Americans. And so let me end by saying Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, everybody. I hope you'll come caucus on February 1st.
Folks, that was the Hillary Clinton rally there in Iowa. Just wrapping up there in Iowa. We are going to take you to another live event that is already happening. Ted Cruz has his own town hall rally going on right now. Let's get you out there live right here on Fox 10 News Now.
And as he sat there listening to people share their stories, what struck him, all of them had problems, all of them had challenges. There's one woman he remembers in particular. It's a woman who described how her son would beat her in order to get money to buy drugs. They all had challenges, and yet they had what Scripture describes as a peace that passes understanding. And my father couldn't understand it. He couldn't understand where that came from, how that could be. My father began asking questions, and the folks holding the Bible study, they said, well, I'll tell you what. Our pastor is coming to the house the next night. Will you come over and you can ask him those questions? So the next night my father came there, and Brother Wiley came, and my father began asking him questions. Now, my father was young, he was smart, he was a scientist, he was an atheist, he was certain he knew everything. And he argued until 11 o'clock at night.
Wow.
And then at 11 o'clock at night, my father said, all right, what about the man in Tibet who's never heard of Jesus? Now, wisely, Brother Wiley didn't take the bait, because he'd have been there another 4 hours. He just said, Raphael, I don't know about the man in Tibet, but you've heard of Jesus. What's your excuse? And my dad describes that hit him like a sledgehammer. And he dropped to his knees, and he gave his life to Jesus. That next Sunday, my dad was baptized. And then he drove to the airport, bought a plane ticket, and flew back to Calgary and my mother and me. Now, a few years later, when I was 8 years old, I became a Christian. And Brother Wiley baptized me. When I was last in Tennessee, he came to the gathering. I didn't know he was going to be there until just a few minutes beforehand. And I hadn't seen him in 35 years. I last saw him when I was 10 years old. Now, not much rattles me. But I got to tell you, that choked me up something powerful. And I told him afterwards, I said, thank you for on that night, April 15th, 1975, sharing the gospel with my dad. By passing on the good news, not only did you transform his life, not only did you transform my mother's life, but it transformed my life. It transformed the lives of my two little girls. I never would have met Heidi, the daughter of missionaries, my wife and best friend in the world. There's a very good chance my mother never would have become a Christian. There's a very good chance I never would have heard the gospel. My girls would not be raised in a Christian home. And the impact of one faithful servant spreading the good news ripples for generation. And I love you, Brother Wiley.
Folks, he told it just as it happened. You and I live in a world that we don't understand much of. But I'm telling you, the providence of God will work in your life as it worked in mine, and with Ted and his father and mother and his cousin. I baptized Ted and his cousin the same night. Marvelous the things that Bibi has done in her life and her family. You never know, the seed that you sow will come to fruit. And in heaven there'll be rejoicing, as there already is with Daryl and Pat Lasan, who opened their home, that Raphael and I could have that encounter. God is good all the time, folks, and you and I live in the providence of God. And I don't want occasions like this to end without us realizing that God is in control. And Ted Cruz is committed not only to conservative philosophy, but with conservative theology as well. He's going to make us a great president to make our nation a great nation again. I want you to do something. I want all of you to stretch your hands out toward up here. We're going to pray. As you have your hands stretched out, we're going to lay hands on Ted Cruz. Father, in the name of Jesus and by the power of the Holy Spirit, I come to anoint my brother in the Lord. That son, Lord, that's raised up to follow you. And I pray, Lord Jesus, that he'll not let those who gave their lives in World War II, like my brother Preston did, go in vain. Like the thousands of others that are in this crowd that lost loved ones in the war since. And I pray, Lord Jesus, that you take the hands of this man and put the mantle upon him, that he might lead our land back to where we were, to the forefathers of our father and our mother, our God, Lord, of God, days gone by, that we'd return our land to you. We commit that to you today, Lord, and thank you that Ted came to visit in Nashville again today. And we could renew that, Lord. Help us not forget those little boys and girls that one day will grow up to be servants like Ted. So, Lord, he's been a good senator from my home state. He'll be a good president to all of our states. In Jesus' name, amen.
Well, this one is part political reality, part prayer revival. And let me tell you, I'm reminded of something my father said many times, which is, I saw freedom taken away once before, and I'll die before I lose it again. Under our Constitution, power is not vested in kings or queens or principalities. It's not vested in a president. It is vested sovereignty in we the people. My hope and optimism comes from the revival, the awakening that is sweeping this country as you look around at your brothers and sisters and friends and neighbors. We are here today because we are not willing to go quietly into the night. We are not willing to give up on our kids and grandkids. And if we stand together and defend freedom, if we stand together and defend the Constitution, if we stand together and defend the Judeo-Christian values upon which this nation was built, if we stand as one, as we the people, we will bring back, we will restore that last best hope for mankind, that shining city on a hill that is the United States of America. Thank you, and God bless you.
What a rally from Ted Cruz, everybody. A little bit later in this afternoon, we will show you the full Ted Cruz rally. I know we came in near the end of it, folks. Folks, and we do want to show you that beautiful holiday forecast. Christmas on Friday with a 54. Gotta love that. Beautiful weather in Arizona. Really, really great time of the year. Nice and cool. Can do a lot of activities. We really love it right now. Got about 8 more minutes left with you guys, so do want to show you something that's really cool involving Donald Trump. And folks, my name is Mike. Happy to be here with you this afternoon. Samia is going to be back at 2:30 for her show, and I'll be back at about 4 o'clock today. So a lot to talk about, but I do want to show you. Donald Trump did put this on his Facebook page. He showed our clip that we clipped from his rally last night. This is the moment when the cameras finally panned. You know, pretty much every rally he asked the media to pan their cameras, and they never did. But yesterday he did, and he puts this out on Facebook. So obviously he's a big fan of Fox 10 News now, and that's why you guys watch as well, because you guys know the service that we do offer. So just like Trump, he watches, you watch. This is guys why you guys are in the Fox 10 News Now stream. So yeah, that was a cool moment where he did use our clip from last night. So feel free to go on Facebook and share it with your friends. Say, "Yep, this is the stream that we watch every day." That's what we do here for you. And the clip on YouTube has already received more than 16,000 views on our YouTube page. So take a look at that. You could share it with your friends and family if you'd like, and then you could be sharing the same thing that Donald Trump has been sharing. So that was really cool. I thought that was really neat. Saw that today. He put that out about an hour ago and also tweeted it. So very cool. Very cool, guys. Well, we're going to have a show coming up in an hour. Glad everybody is here on this Christmas week. Man, this week has been flying by. You guys can pretty much just, obviously count the year over. 2016, hard to believe, is really upon us. So you got to be excited for that. I'm looking forward to it. We are just days away from Christmas. Can't believe it. It's come up so fast. I told you, once that Thanksgiving came, it's just going to fly. And it really, really did. So we'll have a show for you guys in about an hour. Samuel will be back. And later on in my show, I'll show you the full Ted Cruz event that we just saw the last little bit of it. But I do want to show you one more time the very touching moment that happened at the Hillary Clinton rally. You guys just saw it, but I just made a clip of it. So we will share that one more time with you guys and see if this will go viral. We don't know. You never know when you clip these things. But here was the very touching moment just moments ago that you saw right here on Fox 10 News Now.
All that's bullying, not just because of just people who want to be mean, but mental and physical and diseases that people have that they're able to live with every day.
Can you tell me a little bit more about why that's on your mind?
I have asthma, and occasionally I've heard people talking behind my back about not wanting to be near me because I have asthma. I mean, people, it's not contagious. It's not going to.
So yeah, very, very touching moment. We'll see if a lot of people are saying that was a plant or that was staged. Who knows? Maybe we'll hear more about that as the day goes on, as maybe there'll be a story about that. We don't know, but you did see it here first on Fox 10 News Down. That's what we do for you. That's a service that we provide to you. And anytime there's a big event, we always cover it for you live. So much to talk about. Coming up in the next hour, Samia is going to have your full rundown of stories, but I will see you guys back at 4. I hope everyone's going to have a great afternoon. I'll see you guys in just a little bit. Let's make it a great day.